Chapter 6:17. In the spacious hall of the tombs of immortals, the long silence rendered an indescribable atmosphere of awkwardness. Only the constantly churning white clouds under their feet created a bit of vitality for this space. The Wuxian League of 9 regions headed by Hichu Daoran and the Dixian led by Xian Mo walked in 2 distinct rows. The 2 sides ignored each other, their eyes did not touch each other, completely ignoring each other's existence. However, they cautiously restrained their own primordial spirit and magical power, not letting any of it leak out, as if they were infinitely reserved little girls, or women persecuted by extreme religious sections. Wang Lu highly suspected that if this road could be extended indefinitely, these people might really be able to walk until the end of their lifespan and the moment they died without turning their heads or communicating with each other. If they could capture the scene of the 2-side silence until death with a video recording spell, it could be sold at a sky-high price as a gimmick of political themes. Unfortunately, this awkward road soon came to an end. At the end of the white mist, the outline of a magnificent palace was revealed. At this time, the Dixian side finally broke the silence. This is the venue of the grand competition, the entrance to the City of Immortals. As you can see, it is a huge venue designed according to your plan that can meet the needs of a variety of competitive events. It covers an area of more than hundreds of miles, has a height of more than 50 miles, and has more than 1,000 branches. Including the supporting facilities, all the indicators have met your standards. Among them, the arena can accommodate the fight of true immortals. As for the specific quality, you are welcome to visit it later. Xian Mo said and projected the structure of the venue for people to see. On the 9 region side, he too and the others just watched in silence and did not comment on this magnificent venue. Based on their standpoint, it was really inconvenient for people to issue praises. However, even by the most demanding standards, it was difficult to say any negative comments on this huge venue. This stadium was not as simple as just having a grand scale. When the design was submitted, it was a soul formation perfected cultivator who was best at all kinds of engineering designs, under the overall guidance of Wang Lu, who proposed an almost impossible task. The construction difficulty was no less than that of the desolate desolation divine boat that was once proposed by Xingjing's sect to be able to pass through the age of chaos tribulation, which was worth 1 billion spirit stones. This hall not only needed to be sturdy, but also able to accommodate the fight between the Dixian-level combatants. It also put forward very complex and specific requirements for other different projects. For example, the venue of the gourmet food competition required the storage room to be absolutely fresh. The venue of the big hunting match required the construction of a complete ecosystem. There were birds, beasts, plants, insects, and fish, and it could circulate on its own. At that time, when the proposal was being deliberated, a member of the organizing committee had suggested that such a design was clearly a provocation and a slap in the face. However, Wang Lu said, even if those arrogant Dixian people were to slap themselves in the face, they would still insist on building this stadium. Moreover, if they agree to this design but can't implement it perfectly, then if we lose, we can have an excuse. The reason was successfully blocked back. However, now it seemed that the latter reason was not needed. These Dixian people, with the help of the mysterious magical ability of creating things out of nothing in the Tomb of Immortals, actually completed this miracle in the history of architecture in just over a month. After a long time, Hichu Daoran sighed and said, "It's really hard for you guys." Xian Mo smiled. With the magical ability of creating things out of nothing, it's not hard at all. It's not as difficult as creating a world in the immortal dreamland. However, as soon as she finished speaking, she heard the Dixian Baizé sneer. "Not hard at all? Xian Mo, it's really easy for you to say that. How could the creation of things be equal to the creation of things in the immortal dreamland? It would be good if we could build this city of immortals in the immortal dreamland. Unfortunately, these wastes are incompetent and suspicious, they refuse to believe us. If we have to create things out of nothing, then the magical power and energy consumed would be more than 100 times. Moreover, it's obviously you guys who proposed the design, but we are responsible for all the construction work. But you guys can take advantage of this time to do special training. What a good plan. Before his voice fell, he heard a young voice refute, at first, in order to design this set of drawings, our team worked hard for more than 10 days and nights, racking our brains. There were more than 30 designers who died from exhaustion, and there was even a Taoist master of deity stage whose primordial spirit collapsed and perished. And you guys just put in a bit of stupid effort. What qualifications do you have to pretend in front of us? Upon hearing this, Baizé was furious. Nonsense. More than 30 people died from exhaustion with just a dozen design drawings. Do you think we're idiots? Wang Lu sneered. You don't believe me? Then you better watch carefully. With that, he took out a stack of files from his mustard seed bag, unfolded the top one, and then read, Taoist Master Mou, a member of the Standing Committee of the Wuxia League Design Association and an excellent comprehensive designer, unfortunately died in Evian Valley on XX day of XX year of 9 regions calendar at the age of 622. The funeral is scheduled to be held in Evian Valley on XX day of XX year. This is the obituary. With that, he showed the file in front of the people. On the file, there was a square red seal of the Wuxia League, which was particularly eye-catching. The obituary certified by the Wuxia League naturally could not be falsified. Even if the people of Dixian were still unfamiliar with this newly established organization, at least they knew that the authority of the organization was far higher than that of an individual, and the document stamped with the official seal was not a child's play. The people of 9 regions Wuxia League were also stunned, because even Hichu Daoran didn't know who this Taoist Master Mou was. They also didn't know why the seal of the Wuxia League would be stamped on such an inexplicable obituary. Just when everyone was stunned, Wang Lu opened the files one after another and read out the names of the deceased. Taoist Master Hong Luo, Taoist Master Jin Jing. Each obituary was stamped with a scarlet seal that symbolized the supreme authority of the Wuxia League. Every time they saw such an obituary, several supreme elders of 9 regions would involuntarily look at he too, but he too just raised his head high and turned a blind eye to it. It was completely unexpected that the leader of the Wuxia League was known for his rigid and serious work attitude. In the face of these unfortunate sacrifices of the deceased, do you have the face to continue to show off your so-called hard work? Wang Lu said, to solve the dispute between you and me in the way of the grand competition, and to integrate the forces of both sides to fight against Dixian with the minimum loss is the overall strategic situation that we currently face together. To this end, both of us need to constantly compromise to finally reach an agreement. And on our side, we have long been ready to compromise and even sacrifice. On the other hand, from the beginning to the end, you just want to swallow all the spoils of war without paying any price. Just a little bit of effort and you're already full of resentment. This kind of face is not only ridiculous, but also shameful. Baizé angrily said, who are you calling shameful? Wang Lu didn't say much and directly pushed more than 30 obituary notices in front of him. Come on, in the face of these obituary notices of the deceased, explain to me that your work is the most glorious. Baizé was so angry that his qi and blood flowed in the opposite direction and his body exploded. However, when he finally managed to adjust his breath and was ready to launch a counterattack, Xian Mo reached out to stop him and said, well, this kind of verbal dispute is meaningless. When we accepted the other party's complete set of proposals, it was tantamount to accepting the other party's use of this period of time to make various targeted arrangements. We have several times or even more than 10 times their strength and vision, so there's no need to be so calculative. Well said. If it weren't for your immortal spirit aura, I would have thought that you're with them. Xian Mo, everyone asked you to be the leader this time, not to let you lead us against the law. As always, Baizé practiced his way of negation, but this time, Xian Mo was surprisingly tough. "I've heard your opinion, so please keep your mouth shut." Bai Zai's eyelids obviously twitched. However, seeing Xian Mo's firm posture, he could only sneer a few times. After Xian Mo muted Bai Zai, the atmosphere gradually warmed up a bit. Because the previous silence had been broken, the two sides could finally start a limited dialogue. Xian Mo led He Tu and the others into the City of Immortals, introduced the facilities in the city one by one, and invited them to carry out a quality inspection. The 9-region side was not polite and carried out the inspection according to the most stringent standards. The result proved that there was indeed no problem in the city. The frank attitude of the Dixian side had gained the trust of the 9-region side. Thus, the following dialogue was smoother. The two sides began to exchange views on many details of the grand competition and reached a consensus. However, this peaceful dialogue was not the mainstream. When the group of people walked to the center of the City of Immortals and saw the most central venue in the city, the atmosphere suddenly became subtle. In the center of the City of Immortals was a vast arena with a radius of thousands of miles after space folding. In such a vast space, the Dixian side stuffed a complete spiritual vein with great magical power, which gave birth to natural landscapes such as mountains, rivers, and so on. At the same time, the arena was specially strengthened, so that even if a true immortal came and went all out, it would not cause the arena to collapse. This was a super arena that surpassed all the other arenas in the 9 regions in terms of specifications and standards. After witnessing and inspecting the attributes of the venue, the several supremes of 9 regions were amazed. The same venue was not impossible in 9 regions, but even a local tyrant sect like Xingjing sect would not invest a lot of resources to create such a thing. The magical ability to create things out of nothing was really enviable. Since you are satisfied with this venue, why don't you take this opportunity to come in and experience it yourself? Xian Mo said as she walked into the arena. Her whole person was instantly pulled hundreds of miles away by the folded space, but her voice was still passed out without any hindrance. The several supremes looked at each other and knew that today's meeting had finally entered the main topic. After the Dixian side finished their etiquette, it was their turn to face each other. The leader, Xian Mo, was gentle all the way, but at this time, she was the first to jump into the arena and fight against the 9 regions team. It could be seen that this battle had been planned for a long time by the Dixian side. Thus, the next battle was bound to be an earth-shattering one. He too was silent, but his body leaned forward slightly, ready to step forward. The other side sent their leader, so they could not be underestimated. However, before he moved, a figure had already walked in front of him. "Supreme, there is no need for someone of your level to personally take action in this battle. Just leave it to me," Wang Lu said and then turned his eyes to the arena. "Senior Xian Mo, let me play with you this time." Chapter 618. This was the second time that Wang Lu and Xian Mo fought against each other. The last time was in the immortal dreamland, when Wang Lu and his master attacked the heavenly earth women's country. At that time, Xian Mo unleashed the wrath of the heaven. Under the world-destroying thunder, not even a blade of grass grew. The master and disciple tried their best to persist until the end. And this time, his master, the number 1 king pill in 9 regions, was not present. The opponent, Xian Mo, was in the perfect state after the combination of black and white. The gap in strength was 10 times or even 100 times larger than the previous time. However, when Wang Lu entered the arena, it was as if the victory was already in his grasp. "Senior Xian Mo, let's fight for the second time." After seeing Wang Lu enter the arena, Xian Mo was slightly surprised. He thought that the opponent this time would be those supreme-level cultivators who symbolized the peak fighting power of 9 regions. Unexpectedly, the last one to enter the arena was a king pill kid. "Are you serious?" Xian Mo asked incredulously, do you really think you have a chance to win? Although you and your master are of the same lineage, even your master can only win against Bai Zhe in the King Pill realm, but you. The kind-hearted Dixian girl was too embarrassed to say, compared to your master, you are not even as good as an ant, so she just euphemistically said, I'm really not that much weaker than Bai Zhe. Wang Lu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Senior, this is a big misunderstanding. You are also a dignified Dixian girl, yet you actually have the nerve to fight with me, a little fresh meat who has only cultivated for 30 years? This city of immortals was built according to my plan and design to provide a venue for the grand competition. Naturally, the fight in this place is also carried out according to the rules of the grand competition. Therefore, please limit your cultivation base to the King Pill realm, and let's have a King Pill battle. King Pill? Xian Mo was stunned again. So that's how it is. I thought you want to fight with me, but it turns out you also want to limit your cultivation base? Oh, that's good too. It's just that I've almost forgotten how to suppress my strength. According to the rules of the grand competition, the Dixian needed to suppress their strength to the same level as their opponents. It was just that this kind of suppression was very particular about technique. For example, if a nascent soul Taoist master wanted to suppress himself to the King Pill realm, it would actually be very difficult to grasp the degree of control. Taoist Master King Pill, as the name implied, was a perfectly round King Pill in the Jade Mansion. It condensed the great Tao, traced the source, and had endless magical power. At the nascent soul realm, the primordial spirit would catalyze the King Pill, giving birth to vitality. After being cleansed of lead, the great Tao in the King Pill would be sublimated. The process was similar to a mother giving birth to a baby. From a tiny dot, it would eventually grow into a living being, hence the name nascent soul. However, this process was irreversible. In this world, there was no such thing as a baby turning into a tadpole. Naturally, cultivators could not compress their growing nascent soul into a King Pill. Forcibly operating it would only cause the nascent soul to fall and the primordial spirit to collapse. This law could not be violated even if one had the cultivation base of Dixian. Therefore, the so-called cultivation base suppression was, in fact, to forcibly simulate the various abilities of the King Pill cultivator with a stronger power. The magical power, primordial spirit, immortal heart, body, magical ability, and so on were simulated to the level of the Taoist Master King Pill. This kind of simulation naturally had its flaws. The higher the level of the cultivator, the more difficult it was to perfectly imitate the low-level details. If one was not careful, they would exceed the standard of the King Pill in some aspects. And according to the rules of the grand competition, once a violation was made, it would be immediately judged as a loss. In the last battle between Wang Wu and Bai Zhe, strictly speaking, Bai Zhe was suspected of breaking through the limit when he used the immortal technique. How could an ordinary King Pill use the immortal technique? It was just that battle was the battle to establish the prestige of 9 regions, and the rules of the level battle had not been recognized by Dixian. Thus, Bai Zhe was not forced to strictly abide by the rules. However, in this battle, Wang Lu did not intend to be so lenient, he really did not have the capital to be lenient. Fortunately, Xian Mo was also very conscious. After thinking for a while, he said, in my case, it is difficult to guarantee that all my attributes are perfectly limited to the level of the King Pill, so, let her play with you. With that, Xian Mo took a gem hairpin from his head and touched the gem on the hairpin with his finger. The glittering and translucent ruby rolled down, turned in mid-air, and then turned into a beautiful girl who was exactly the same as Xian Mo. This is my King Pill doppelganger. She has the same thinking and knowledge as me, but she is the real King Pill. If you can win against her, you can win against me in the King Pill realm. The doppelganger of King Pill also smiled like a flower and said, that being said, I'm actually just the master's plaything. Please be merciful. Wang Lu clicked his tongue and flicked the rouge tears in his hand, which made a crisp buzzing sound. Plaything? Perhaps, for Dixian, a doppelganger of King Pill was just a plaything. However, as long as he could win, why should he care about other things? So, what about being lenient? That could wait until after he won. Thereupon, while the buzzing sound of the rouge tears was still trembling, Wang Lu's sword qi had already burst out. His magical power output was almost crazy. The magical ability of the King Pill realm, the incomparably violent primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi, the rapidly expanding non-phase sword defense. Any one of these was enough to exhaust the magical power of an ordinary peak King Pill cultivator in the blink of an eye. Even if the King Pill was endlessly growing, it still couldn't supply the magical power. Moreover, the overly tyrannical output was even more dangerous. However, Wang Lu relied on his deep foundation and the supreme aptitude of the Void Spirit Root to launch all three at once. In the twinkling of an eye, the aftermath of the momentum alone formed a whistling wave, which caused the world to change color. The complexion of Xian Mo's King Pill doppelganger also changed, no longer as calm as before. She was the doppelganger of Dixian, and her vision and skills were far higher than the ordinary King Pill cultivators. If he fought with her skill, even if Wang Lu cultivated two immortal-level cultivation methods at the same time, he would still be no match for her. However, this unreasonable attack just hit her soft spot. As an doppelganger, her power was limited. At the same time, it was impossible for her to have the unprecedented Void Spirit Root. Therefore, the power that could erupt in a short period of time was even more limited. The power of Wang Lu's tide-like attack was more than 10 times stronger than her. Moreover, with his magical ability, even the space was distorted. Therefore, even though she had the vision of a Dixian, she still felt a bit tricky at this time. It was really difficult to cook without rice. However, Dixian was, after all, Dixian. The girl's foot touched the ground, and her figure suddenly became distorted and transparent. Then, under the violent sword qi of Wang Lu, she was smashed into pieces. However, the fragments did not disappear. Instead, after floating in the air for a while, they scattered further and further away like dust, and then tried to reassemble. No matter how strong Wang Lu's sword qi was, and how fine the particles were, these particles could always be reassembled under the drive of an invisible force. If one was not careful, a large number of fragments would gather into a lump. And when the lump was connected to each other, it would gradually condense into the outline of a human body. Wang Lu continued to expand the range of his attack, but the surging sword wind only made the fragments drift farther and farther away, and the aggregated lump became more and more elusive. Outside the arena, a supreme of 9 regions who was watching the fight could not help but exclaim. Good method. She actually changed her own life form, which completely offset the fierce offensive of Wang Lu. But, is this really the method of the King Pill cultivator? Xian Mo faintly smiled and said, of course it is. What she used is the way of the 3 living things, which can split herself into countless individuals, like sand, fog, and all kinds of sharp weapons. With her King Pill stage, she can perfectly control the 3rd level of flesh and blood avatar. Although it is difficult to hurt people with this, she will no longer be hurt by the sword qi. If you don't believe me, I can tell you the method of practicing this method. I won't lie openly about this kind of thing. Won't be hurt by the sword qi. I'm afraid that fellow Taoists' words are not true enough. Hichu Daoran slightly narrowed his eyes and said softly. Not to mention that the fog transformation technique is restrained by the 5-element spell, the fact that she will not be hurt by the sword qi, is only because Wang Lu's sword is not sharp enough. If his sword can be sharper, no matter how small the opponent is, he can accurately divide and destroy them. Presumably, you will not be able to regenerate. Xian Mo was silent for a while, then shook his head and said with a smile, fellow Taoists' eyes are like torches, truly admirable. This method of 3 living things indeed can't perfectly restrain all kinds of sharp weapons. If there is a sword cultivator with a heaven-defying realm, even if I transform into millions of avatars, I will still be shattered in one blow. For example, my brother Ming's heaven-splitting sword, I absolutely do not dare to use this method to block it. But for your King Pil Daoran, I'm afraid he can't refine such a pure sword intent. Hichu Daoran also nodded. He is too distracted by chores. In terms of the purity of his sword intent, he is indeed not the best in the world. But if you think that you can defeat him with this, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. Xian Mo asked, "Oh? His best sword qi is ineffective, and he may not have the time to use the 5-element spell. Is there any way to turn the tables? Let's watch and find out." Xian Mo then waited curiously for Wang Lu's trump card to turn the tables. However, after waiting for a long time, he only saw Wang Lu constantly repeating his means, as if he had exhausted all his limited abilities. Non-phase sword defense, primal chaos sword qi, original magical ability, and even the props in his mustard seed bag were not taken out. At this time, Xian Mo's doppelganger, who had long been immune to these attacks, began to gradually stabilize his position, and continued to regenerate in places that Wang Lu could not take care of. If this continued, Wang Lu would eventually be exhausted. Even without waiting for him to be exhausted, as long as this violent offensive was slightly weakened, Xian Mo would immediately launch a counterattack. And the means of Dixian's doppelganger was not something that an ordinary King Pil could resist. However, after watching for a long time, Xian Mo's counterattack never happened. And Xian Mo's face gradually became surprised. The Supremes of 9 regions were also surprised. Wang Lu, this kid actually lasted for so long. From the beginning of the fight until now, he had been fighting for a full hour. For a common King Pil level fight, an hour was not a long time, but he had been crazily outputting his magical power for a full hour. If it was described as sexual intercourse, this was equivalent to the last moment of ejaculation for a full hour. Not to mention a peak King Pil, even if it was a Yuanying stage Daoist master, according to this efficiency, their magical power output would have long been crazy. However, Wang Lu was still as vigorous as a dragon and as fierce as a tiger, and there was not the slightest trace of fatigue on his face. On the other side, Xian Mo's doppelganger could not hold on any longer. No matter how brilliant the 3 begets all things magical ability was, this kind of forced life form transformation technique was, after all, against the heavens' will and needed to consume a considerable amount of magical power. As a King Pil level cultivator, her magical power could be continuously generated, but under Wang Lu's violent attack, her magical power output was more than her magical power output. And until now, she thought that no matter what, it would be Wang Lu who would fall first. As a result, Wang Lu's endurance had broken through common sense. If this stalemate continued, she was afraid that the one who would lose would be her. And in this state, she had no time to change her moves at all. Enough, I give up this game. Add a small tale, this book has been open to read on WeChat. Usually, there will be some new book news and short stories on the WeChat platform. You are welcome to follow. You can search for the Spirit Sword Mountain on the public account. Thank you everyone. By the way, the traditional Chinese book is available on Taobao. Chapter 6:19. When he came out of the arena, Wang Lu inwardly was somewhat glad. In fact, at the end of the fight, he was like a dried-up oil lamp. A full hour of output. Such a feat, perhaps many people would feel kidney deficiency just by hearing it. As a cultivator with Void Spirit Root, his magical power recovery speed and output efficiency were far higher than his peers. However, in a fight between cultivators, not only the magical power went in and out of the Jade Mansion, but also the participation of primordial spirit, immortal heart and physical body. Although Wang Lu's magical power was still abundant, his physical body and primordial spirit were somewhat unable to support it. Fortunately, in the end, Xian Mo's King Pill avatar gave up the fight. Perhaps her power had been exhausted, or perhaps in the face of a peerless man who could fiercely output for an hour, her heart was shaken and her fighting spirit was lost. In short, Wang Lu eventually won. After not seeing you for a while, your progress is really impressive. Outside the arena, Xian Mo was quite amazed by Wang Lu's cultivation base advancement. A few months ago, his performance in the immortal dreamland was still fresh in Xian Mo's memory. At that time, Wang Lu from the middle-grade King Pill had reached the sky in a single bound. Whether it was his swordsmanship or immortal heart, they were still shaky and quite unstable. It stood to reason that he needed at least a few years to stabilize his cultivation base and become a real King Pill expert. But at this time, regardless of whether he had stabilized his cultivation base or not, the strength he showed was more than twice as strong as a few months ago. A few months ago, it was absolutely impossible for Wang Lu to maintain such a high intensity of magical power output for an hour. This kind of endurance had completely exceeded the scope of normal understanding. Xian Mo's King Pill avatar clearly had the ability to restrain the sword qi, but it was actually suppressed to death by the opponent's sword qi. This kind of tortuous and bizarre fight, if it was before the fight, she would never believe it. Wang Lu also sighed in his heart. During this period of time, apart from dealing with official business, he did not neglect his own cultivation. Although he could not be compared to those madmen who cultivated day and night, such as Qianghua, Zhu Shiyao, etc., his progress was still very fast and did not lose to anyone else. However, this was still not enough. The King Pill doppelganger that could defeat Xian Mo was mostly due to the element of surprise. If it wasn't for the fact that Xian Mo thought that he could restrain a sword cultivator with just the power of the three begets all things, he wouldn't have been able to defeat Dixian, who had so many tricks up his sleeve. In the face of Wang Lu's first wave of ferocious attacks, Xian Mo directly gave up on resisting and used his doppelgangers to sustain himself. This was actually a wrong move. If they had to fight again, Wang Lu had no confidence that he could defeat his opponent, unless he was given a few more years to truly stand on the top position of King Pill. However, let alone a few years, the Dixian present probably wouldn't even give him a few days or even a few hours of leisure. After defeating Xian Mo, there were soon other people who started to make trouble. What a wonderful cooperation! Bai Zai clapped his hands as he stood up and walked to the front of Xian Mo, staring at her coldly. Xian Mo, I can let it go before, but now you've gone too far, haven't you? Xian Mo also looked at him coldly. Bai Zai, I haven't given you permission to speak. Huh, so what if you didn't give me permission? When everyone chose you as the leader, did they allow you to lose to a piece of trash who has cultivated for less than 30 years? Yes, you are the leader of all the Dixian in the Tomb of Immortals, so you have the authority to order and forbid. Therefore, when you told me to shut up, I didn't hesitate to do so. However, my respect for the authority of the leader is not without bottom line. Don't forget, even when the boss is still here, I still have the power to stop him when his behavior crosses the line. And now, because of your own selfishness, you disregard the public interest, which has gone far beyond the bottom line. Xian Mo tightly frowned. My own selfishness? Are you going to slander me? Bai Zai said, slander? When you resuscitation from your sleep, your primordial spirit was split. It was those 9 regions people who helped you combine the two into one, which gave you a new lease of life. Therefore, since then, you have been kind to them in every possible way, so that today, you don't even care about the face of Dixian and just handed over the victory. Losing just now is indeed my fault. Later, I will naturally apologize to everyone. However, it's not your turn to blame me. 3 months ago, you also lost to a 9 regions King Pill. Bai Zai said, yes, I did lose 3 months ago. That 9 regions king pill is really powerful, I am convinced. But no matter how bad I am, I won't lose to this king pill. Bai Zai said and then pointed at Wang Lu with disdain. Xian Mo suddenly became angry. Bai Zai, you've gone too far. Wang Lu also laughed. I, your father, am really unjustly implicated. But, that's fine. Since you, Baizhua, have said it like this, then let's have a fight. Upon hearing this, Bai Zai was stunned. You want to fight me? Yes, didn't you say that no matter how bad you are, you won't lose to me? Then come and prove it to me personally. Let me see how awesome you are. With that, Wang Lu directly stepped into the arena, leaving everyone with an unusually confident back. For a time, not to mention Bai Zai and Xian Mo, even Hichu Daoran and the other supreme of 9 regions were stunned. He still wants to fight? He has just experienced a fierce battle. At this time, I'm afraid his physical strength hasn't fully recovered. How can he have the confidence to fight the next fight? Does he really think that his strength can beat Dixian? The last fight was obviously won by a fluke. He should know that he tried his best. Wang Lu has never been a reckless person. Perhaps he has a deeper meaning? Upon hearing this, Hichu Daoran shook his head. Fellow Taoists, you don't have to think so complicated. He just wants to fight again. Fight again? Why? Because no matter whether you win or lose, it's not bad. If you win, needless to say, the morale of the 9 region side will be greatly boosted. Even if you lose, at least you can learn more about the cards of Dixian. Moreover, in today's tentative fight, the result of 1 win and 1 loss is the easiest for both sides to accept. Hearing the explanation of Hichu, the Supremes could not help but sigh with emotion. At such a young age, Wang Lu already had the style of a great general. His consideration was so thorough, which was admirable. However, for the people in the arena, things were actually simpler than what Supreme Hichu had guessed. Because he felt that he had a chance of winning. If it were any other Dixian, Wang Lu would probably not start the fight again. Because he was indeed a little tired. It was difficult to continue the kind of violent fight that lasted for an hour. However, when the opponent was Bai Zai, it was another matter. This Baizhua youth was born with a mocking face. As soon as he opened his mouth, people wanted to slap him in the face. Ignoring his provocation, Wang Lu's thoughts could not be smooth. Moreover, he had almost used up all his cards in the last fight with Wang Wu. The negation seal was indeed a very powerful immortal treasure, but after Wang Lu saw it once, it was no longer mysterious. Right now, he already had several plans in his mind, all of which could break the negation seal in the King Pill realm. Moreover, he also had other means. Before this fight, he had actually made quite adequate preparations. All kinds of props were piled up in his mustard seed bag, each with its own magical function. In the last fight, he almost didn't use these props to win, which was quite a pity. After Wang Lu entered the arena, Bai Zai did not hesitate and followed him into the arena. Kid, since you're courting death, don't blame me for being merciless. After entering the arena, Bai Zai immediately sacrificed the negation golden seal. 11 golden seals floated around him. Then, he plucked the largest one and pushed it forward. With Dixian's means, the moment he entered the arena, he locked onto Wang Lu's position. He was 500 miles away from the edge of the arena, right in the center of the arena. Such a magnanimous attitude was indeed praiseworthy, but it was also extremely stupid. Bai Zai was not as easy to talk to as Xian Mo. After entering the arena, winning was his only goal. And what he wanted was a thunderous victory. Therefore, after locking onto Wang Lu's position, he directly used the largest negation seal in an attempt to erase his entire person from the arena. This move was ruthless. He really did not show any mercy. At the same time, he did not believe that with Wang Lu's ability, he could withstand the full blow of his negation immortal technique. However, the moment he made his move, a warning suddenly came from his primordial spirit, warning him that a great danger was about to descend. Bai Zai immediately looked in the direction of his intuition, only to see 3 grayish-golden awls aimed at him. This is Golden Thunder Origin Cone. Bai Zai was shocked. He never thought that as soon as he entered the arena, he would encounter this kind of great killing weapon that was famous in 9 regions tens of thousands of years ago. This kind of weapon, which was made from the thunder of divine tribulation, only needed one to blow up a mountain range. Even a Taoist master of deity stage would find it difficult to escape unscathed. And now, Bai Zai was only in the King Pill stage. Moreover, he had just launched the negation seal and poured all his magical power into his immortal treasure, so it was too late for him to deal with these 3 golden thunder origin cones. In an instant, Bai Zai gnashed his teeth and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. No wonder Wang Lu entered the arena in such a carefree manner before. It turned out that he had specially set up such a trap for him. 3 golden thunder origin cones, what a big deal. These were precious props in the era of Dixian. Now, they should be priceless. Yet, he actually used as many as 3 of them in one go. It was the complete opposite of his master. However, it was just a daydream to use such a trick to defeat Dixian. Bai Zai fiercely bit the tip of his tongue, and the negation seal in his hand shone brilliantly. The object of negation suddenly changed from Taoist Master King Pill, who was 500 miles away, to the Golden Thunder Origin Cone. The next moment, the Golden Cone, which was about to detonate all its power, was directly obliterated by the irresistible force and disappeared without a trace. Bai Zai froze in place for 5 breaths of time before he realized that he had finally passed this disaster. At the critical moment, he used the negation immortal technique to negate the existence of the golden cone. Good. It's indeed impressive, but unfortunately, it ends here. After all, the number of Golden Thunder Origin Cone was limited. Even if Wang Lu was the richest person in the world, it was impossible for him, a Taoist Master King Pill, to use too many golden cones at the same time. Stimulating this kind of hidden weapon that carried the power of the divine tribulation thunder was also a big burden for the user. Bai Zai took a long breath, picked up the largest golden seal again, and then locked it to the place 500 miles away. This time, let's see what other means you have to escape. At this time, through the eyes of Dixian, he could clearly see Wang Lu's every move. This included the slightly surprised expression on his face after the golden awl trap had failed, as well as the white flag that he had suddenly raised high in the air. You! Bai Zai was shocked and angry at the same time. He actually surrendered? Seeing that he was about to win the undoubted victory with the negation seal, he actually surrendered? However, just as Bai Zai was furious, a sharp sword chi suddenly stabbed at him. Before he could react, it had already cut his wrist. Continue to promote the WeChat public platform at the tail end. You can see it by searching for Spirit Sword Mountain in the past. Thank you for your support. Chapter 620. By the time he felt the sharp pain, Bai Zai's wrist no longer belonged to him. The sharp sword energy directly broke through his protective technique and cut through his body and bones that were harder than metal and stone. After one strike, Bai Zai's wrist was severed from the middle. This strike was too fast and too ruthless. In the blink of an eye, Bai Zai had lost his wrist. But under the pain, he calmed down like never before. He didn't consider whether Wang Lu's white flag was a fake surrender or how to deal with it according to the rules of the battle. He didn't even consider how to treat the wound on his wrist. It was easy to use the negation seal to negate the injury, regenerate the broken wrist, and suppress the chaotic immortal spirit chi in his body. But there was no time. The person who ambushed him with the sword energy was not far away from him. Using the Golden Thunder Chaos Cone as a cover, that person successfully avoided his senses and succeeded in a sneak attack at the critical moment. And an even more fatal attack was waiting for him. Compared to Wang Lu's white flag and the wound on his wrist, the sneak attacker who was close at hand was more important. At this moment, Bai Zai's strength as a Dixian was displayed to the fullest. Even though he was in the middle of a series of traps, he still made a timely and effective response. His uninjured left hand picked up a negation seal and pushed it to the side. The immortal spirit chi condensed on the golden seal, and he activated his immortal technique. Although the immortal technique was activated in a hurry, at such a close distance, it was enough to wipe out a cultivator at the peak of King Pill in an instant. As expected, the moment he used the golden seal, there was a clanging sound beside him. Something was hit by the negation technique. But in the next moment, the sharp sword energy rushed toward him again. Bai Zai quickly turned his wrist to erase the sword energy. But after using the immortal technique consecutively, he was already out of breath. At the same time, he was a little shaken. Who on earth could take my negation technique head-on? In a trance, a white shadow flashed in front of him, and more than 10 sharp sword energies stabbed toward him from all directions. Could it be that bitch in white? The master and disciple had planned to fight 2 against 1. Bai Zai clenched his teeth and raised a negation seal high up in the air. It created a huge image that looked like a seal and blocked all the sword chi. At the same time, he also accurately captured the figure of the ambusher. Surprisingly, the assailant was not the woman who defeated him 3 months ago. Although they were both dressed in white, this person's expression was cold, and her facial features were more delicate and elegant. They were definitely not the same person. Most importantly, she held a pink short sword in her hand, and the sword emitted a terrifying fluctuation. Shockingly, it was an immortal artifact. And that style, that aura. Rouge tears. In an instant, Bai Zai determined the identity of the attacker, Rouge Tears, who fought independently, and her sword spirit. It was no wonder that the negation seal was unable to defeat him. Under the King Pill realm, his celestial techniques could not do anything to celestial treasures. At the very least, he could not write them off. When it came to the stability of existence, a King Pill level cultivator was far from being comparable to an immortal treasure. However, this did not mean that Bai Zai had no way to deal with his opponent. The sword spirit of Rouge Tears had cut off his wrist, not because the opponent was strong, but because the sword had come too suddenly and unexpectedly. Once he stabilized his footing, it would be easy to deal with an immortal sword spirit that had not yet matured. Of course, using the negation immortal technique to obliterate was ineffective. To deal with an immortal treasure, he had to focus on suppression. So he put down the negation seal, stretched out his left hand, and pressed down. The sword spirit autumn beam suddenly staggered, and the girl's eyebrows showed incredible shock. Just now, she had used the method of half-possession, and with the help of Rouge Tears' natural high speed, she had circled around Bai Zai, looking for flaws. Ordinary King Pill level cultivators could not even catch her afterimage. But Bai Zai just stretched out his hand, and a huge force came down on her head. Even the space hundreds of feet around her was locked, and she could not move at all. You don't think I only have the negation immortal technique, do you? Bai Zai lightly said and then clenched his left hand. The sword spirit autumn beam screamed, and her body was involuntarily suppressed back into the body of Rouge Tears, unable to come out again. The pink dagger fell from mid-air, and its spiritual energy was completely lost. In addition to the way of negation, Bai Zai, as a Dixian, had too many means. Suppressing an immortal treasure was just one of them. Let alone the object was Rouge Tears, the weapon that Xian Mo had once used. In the group of immortal tombs, all the Dixian were brothers and sisters who treated each other with sincerity, so they were very familiar with each other's means. Therefore, Bai Zai knew the characteristics and weaknesses of Rouge Tears like the back of his hand. With only his left hand, he suppressed the sword spirit autumn beam and made rouge tears fall from mid-air. However, on the way down, a powerful palm held it up. Wang Lu, Bai Zhe finally waited for the right person. After several rounds of delay from autumn beam, Wang Lu had already arrived from 500 miles away. Holding rouge tears in his right hand, he took a step forward, and his golden sword defense, like a landslide, pushed forward unstoppably. Bai Zhe inwardly sneered, and at the same time, he once again took off the negation seal that was suspended beside him, ready to write off Wang Lu's sword chi and himself. However, as soon as he lifted his arm, he felt a numbness in his joints, and his action slowed down. The Dixian's reaction was very fast. Bai Zhe's immortal spirit energy swept through his body and found the root cause. The poison first entered the body from the broken wrist, and now it was entrenched everywhere in the body. Exterminate immortal poison? At this time, the deadly poison, known to be able to seal the throat of an immortal, was running wildly in his body. Compared with the exterminate immortal poison that made people tremble with fear 10,000 years ago, this poison had a world of difference in lethality, but its concealment was far better. People who came from that era had a keen sense of touch for a few kinds of highly toxic poisons. However, this kind of poison that was close to the exterminate immortal poison had been in the body for a long time, and the toxicity began to take effect. In the past 16,000 years, 9 regions had indeed changed a lot. Unfortunately, in the end, it was still mostly degenerated. If it was the real exterminate immortal poison, just a little bit would be enough to kill him. But now, he just had to waste a little bit of his immortal spirit energy to expel it. Bai Zhe's left hand was sore and numb, and he was no longer able to launch the negation seal. At the same time, the poison in his body spread, and it was difficult for him to fully summon his immortal spirit energy to defend. However, with a move of his feet, his figure had already retreated several miles away, easily avoiding Wang Lu's unstoppable non-phase sword defense. However, when his feet landed, Bai Zhe raised his head and saw a blood-red sky. In the tumbling and boiling blood cloud, thousands of sharp swords showed their loftiness. Damn it, it's really watertight. At this point, even Bai Zhe couldn't help but admire Wang Lu's successive means. From the moment he entered the arena, he began to set up the Golden Thunder Origin Cone, Immortal Sword Rouge Tears, Exterminate Immortal Poison, and this original magical ability to lure the enemy in. Every step of his was effective. He forced himself to be hit one after another. His wrist was broken, he was poisoned, and he was forced to retreat. The scene was even more embarrassing than when he faced Wang Wu 3 months ago. However, the victory still belongs to me. Bai Zhe roared, and then his figure was submerged by the thousands of sharp swords that fell from the sky. Those sharp swords contained Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. Each sword was like a full blow from a Taoist Master King pill. After thousands of bombardment, the place where Bai Zhe stood was cut by hundreds of feet, turning into a shocking deep valley. And Bai Zhe stood at the bottom of the valley, holding a blood-stained golden seal in his left hand, pointing it straight to the sky. His face was pale, and his figure was shaking. However, under the bombardment of the flying swords, he seemed to be unscathed. At the critical moment, he forcibly launched the negation seal with his life-blood essence, negating all the flying swords that were about to hit him. Therefore, although the ground was blasted into a deep valley, he himself was safe and sound. However, the price of using his life-blood essence was actually quite high. His original body was Dixian. At this time, he suppressed his power and simulated himself as Taoist Master King Pill before entering the arena. No matter what injuries he suffered in the arena, once he walked out of the arena and recovered his cultivation, he would be able to recover in an instant. As for the consumption of magic power, it was a drop in the ocean for Dixian. However, life-blood essence was different. Once used, it was used, and the loss was very difficult to recover. Moreover, using life-blood essence under the state of King Pill was simply an unforgivable waste. Most of the energy would be wasted in vain. But at that time, Bai Zhe had no better way. There was more than one method to solve the problem, and life-blood essence was the one that consumed the least. However, the most difficult period was finally over. Now that he had gotten rid of the poison in his body, he could once again use the immortal qi. Therefore, he put his left hand forward. The blood cloud in the sky instantly dissipated. And his broken right hand quickly grew back. The negation immortal technique was not his only technique, but it was the most useful and almost omnipotent technique. Relying on the negation immortal technique, he could even cycle endlessly in battle. No matter if he was seriously injured or his magic power was exhausted, he could use the negation seal to write it off. This kind of reversing cause and effect immortal technique allowed him to stand out among the many Dixian and become the second most powerful person, second only to the leader. Even though many people were quite dissatisfied with his character, they had no choice but to rank behind him. Of course, under the state of King Pill, Bai Zhe was still unable to achieve an endless cycle. Now, he was already quite tired and battered. However, the initiative has been snatched back by him. Wang Lu's series of traps would eventually run out. Once these traps were gone, Bai Zhe was confident that he could end the fight in an instant when the two fought head-on. As long as he successfully used the negation immortal technique once, Wang Lu would not be able to withstand it. He definitely did not have the divine ability that Wang Wu had to carry her sword with her. However, just as Bai Zhe was about to activate the negation seal, he realized that the target had already disappeared without a trace. Chapter 621. It was 2 days later when the 9 regions people left the tombs of immortals. The city of immortals was magnificent and had many facilities. Even if it was just a cursory tour, it would take a lot of time. Not to mention that they had experienced 2 fierce battles in the arena in the center of the city, and the second one was particularly protracted. However, this long protracted battle had achieved gratifying results. The result of 1 win and 1 loss could be said to be not too bad. However, the win was already soul-stirring, and the loss was even more so. As long as they thought of the situation in the second match, the Supremes could not help but laugh. After Wang Lu used all his means and traps to force Bai Zhe into a sorry state, he threw the white flag and gave up. It was just that, when he left, he was very quiet, deliberately leaving Bai Zhe to roar in the arena for half a day. In the end, it was his Dixian companion who couldn't stand it anymore and came in to remind him that the battle was over. And at that time, Bai Zhe's expression was really worth the people in the arena to ponder for a long time, because it was hard to imagine that an immortal cultivator who had achieved the achievements of Dixian would show such a desperate, crazy, and distorted expression. Were it not for the fact that Dixian had a stable immortal heart, perhaps when he walked out of the arena, Bai Zhe's immortal heart would have collapsed and his primordial spirit would have collapsed. At least, the several Supremes present asked themselves that if they were in his place and were played like this, moreover, it was under the watchful eyes of the public, perhaps it would be very difficult for them to have the face to live in this world. Wang Lu, this kid is really shrewd. A Supreme of 9 regions sincerely sighed with emotion. Yes, although his cultivation base is also very strong, it's actually secondary. Another Supreme deeply felt the same way. In the battle against Xian Mo and Bai Zhe, Wang Lu showed shocking strength. In the first match against Xian Mo, his crushing posture left a deep impression on everyone. However, what was really worth paying attention to was the second battle. From the very beginning, he had no chance of winning against Bai Zhe. There was a world of difference in strength, and his opponent was not as easy to talk to as Xian Mo. However, Wang Lu had forcefully obtained a victory under such circumstances. That's right. Although it seemed that Wang Lu had given up and admitted defeat, anyone with eyes would know who the winner of that battle was. The meticulous and comprehensive pre-battle preparations, the interlocking traps, and the strategy of withdrawing and retreating at the right time were all the embodiment of battle wisdom. This kind of wisdom was definitely not just a flash of inspiration. In essence, it was a sea of calculations. A quick-witted person might not be scary, but a quick-witted person who was good at scheming was too scary. Lingjian School is really lucky. With such a disciple, the school will surely prosper in the next 100 years. They are full of talents. In addition to Wang Lu, that Zhu Shiyao and Lu Li also have peerless aptitude. In terms of cultivation, they are not much inferior to Wang Lu. It's just that they lack his talent. Alas, in the past decades, there have been many talented young cultivators in 9 regions, but there are not many who can really stand out. Unfortunately, our sect has tens of thousands of cultivators, but we don't even have such a disciple. Ha, fellow Daoist, you're belittling yourself. Your disciple Qing Yangzi is superior, not necessarily inferior to the lead disciples of the 5 uniques. I don't know how many people are envious of him. Upon hearing this, that Supreme shook his head. Originally, I did have high hopes for Qing Yangzi, and I was even complacent. However, after seeing Wang Lu today, with that, several other Supreme shook their heads. Each of them had a similar genius disciple, whose strength was far beyond that of their peers, worthy to be the future leader of a high-rank sect. However, compared with today's Wang Lu, the gap was too obvious. On the other side, Wang Lu himself couldn't be complacent at all. It was natural for him to perform better than his peers, because he was not really a peer in the real sense. He used to be the big brother of the golden generation of Lingjian School, a cultivator of the same generation as Feng Yin and the others. What was there to be proud of when he crushed a group of juniors? Moreover, in the eyes of others, his second fight was soul-stirring and skillful. But in the end, he still lost. He had done his best in that fight. Whether it was the calculation before the fight or the means during the fight, he had done his best. Moreover, he rarely used a large number of external objects. The 3 golden thunder cones and the exterminate immortal powder were rare goods that he had spent a huge amount of public funds to raise. Even so, he could only force Bai Zhe into a sorry state. He couldn't really defeat his opponent. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even dare to let the opponent's negation seal hit him. Because he knew that he couldn't take it. The gap between Dixian and King Pill was so big that it almost made people desperate. However, Wang Lu would never easily despair. On the way back, he repeatedly thought about it, and in his heart, there was a bit more hope. Compared to 3 months ago, there's a world of difference. 3 months ago, I thought that only Wang Wu had a chance to win in this King Pill group. The others were simply sent to die. But today, I, after all, have 1 win and 1 loss. And in terms of pure fighting power, I'm not the undisputed number 1 in the King Pill group. The gap between me and Zhu Shiyao and Qiong Hua is only a hair's breadth. If I could have more time. Wang Lu further thought that if he could have a few more months to cultivate, so that his non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword could be promoted by several layers. Was there a second possibility in the last fight? Yes, in the fight with Bai Zhe, he was actually very close to victory. If he could consolidate his strength and sublimate it, unfortunately, there's no time. Fortunately, they don't have time. In the group of immortal tombs, Dixian were also summarizing the gains and losses of the 2 fights. The first to speak was Xian Mo. Although she lost to Wang Lu in the fight, compared to Bai Zhe in the second fight, she won more recognition as the loser. Therefore, the concluding speech was also made by her. At this time, Xian Mo's face was solemn, and her expression was so cold that it could freeze the air, which was completely opposite to her previous gentle and elegant posture. They have shown a shocking rate of improvement. I even regret giving them 3 months to prepare for the battle. But this kind of regret is meaningless. What we need to do next is prepare to win every match and put an end to this pointless dispute. On the fighting side, according to today's 2 fights, they are running out of time. Wang Lu will not fight a fight that he is not sure of. The strength that he showed today should be the best card he has. There were only a few days left, and it wasn't enough. As for the literary competition. With that, Xian Mo turned her gaze to one side. Luo Shui, how is your preparation? Is there any problem? A petite girl smiled sweetly. Don't worry. Xian Mo sighed. Fortunately, we have you. If you didn't wake up, we really don't have the confidence to compete with the entire cultivators of 9 regions. Luo Shui smiled. With me, there's definitely no problem in the literary competition. At this time, a Dixian asked, although there's no doubt about Luo Shui's strength, there are so many things that need to be tested. Can she do it alone? Before his voice fell, they heard a charming girl's laughter. What do you mean by alone? A petite figure quietly appeared behind that Dixian and gently patted his shoulder. It was another Luo Shui. The number of people has never been a problem. While speaking, the 3rd Luo Shui quietly appeared, and then the 4th, the 5th. There are less than 100 of our resuscitation companions, and less than half of them can be used. It's far from enough to compete with a large team of more than 2,000 people. Fortunately, they asked for a graded competition, dividing most of the events into different levels. Actually, this is actually beneficial to us. Yes, that's why I'm really looking forward to the grand competition in a few days. Yes, I'm looking forward to the official start of the grand competition. I'm looking forward to it. In Wang Lu's office in the lava valley behind Royal Soldier Sect, an uninvited guest in white constantly hindered the normal official business with all kinds of moaning and moaning. Soon, the owner of the office slapped the table to stop him and said, "Enough, you unruly person, get out of here. F***ck, you dog official, how could you be so arrogant and rude to the literary and artistic workers of 9 regions? How can a lowly person like you be considered a member of the literary circle? I'm the most popular idol of the year. I don't know how many young and ignorant cultivators call my name in their dreams, Murong Bingli Night Charm Phoenix Yen Yuan Wuer. Show me some respect. Call your name in their dreams? That's true. I don't know how many single cultivators rely on you to relieve the pain of loneliness. Unfortunately, every time they miss you, they inevitably cause the death of hundreds of millions of people. Half of the sin is on your head. I think you've already committed a heinous crime, so you'd better find a place to redeem yourself." While the two were quarreling, the 3rd person in the office finally couldn't bear it anymore. "Be quiet, you two. If you want to flirt, get out of here. Don't forget that there are people working here." The 2 people who quarreled immediately stopped and then looked at the 3rd person in surprise. Little Hai actually rose up. Mutation, it's a real mutation. How could the always gentle and virtuous intellectual Hai Yunfan of 10,000 Arts sect become so irritable? In my opinion, it must be you, a dog official, who covets his handsome appearance and has done something improper to him. **T, I assign him all kinds of work every day so that he can get all-round experience. This kind of leader's love for his subordinates can be called as heavy as a mountain. Such a pure feeling, you actually slander me for coming out of the closet? Enough." Hai Yunfan slapped the table again. "You too. Didn't you say that you want to discuss the countermeasures carefully? There are only 3 days left before the grand competition, but our progress is still a lot behind. Have you come up with a solution or not?" Upon hearing this, Wang Lu smiled. "Isn't it obvious? Looking at the 2 of us, of course, we've found a way." Hai Yunfan somewhat suspiciously said, "Found a way? When?" Wang Lu said, "Just now, when she reported to me about her work, I suddenly had a brainwave and came up with it. Wang Wu also said, I saw that he suddenly thought of it, and then he also thought of it. Hai Yunfan sighed. Have the two of you reached such a level of telepathy? Wang Wu said, what telepathy? I just looked at the written materials on his desk, determined the general scope, and then used my brain to think about it, and then I could come up with his idea. Hai Yunfan inwardly said, isn't this telepathy? So, what idea did you come up with? I remember that when we studied the plan for the grand competition, didn't you say that we couldn't find an opportunity to delay time? Wang Lu said, it's not that we couldn't find an opportunity, but we couldn't find an opportunity to delay enough time. Now, we can barely do it. With that, he reached out and pointed at the plan book on the table, and then pressed his finger on one of the lines. Opening ceremony. Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform search for Spirit Sword Mountain. By the way, I'm going to start to speed up my writing. I will add updates from time to time, please look forward to it. If you think you're not keeping it a secret, I can help you brainwash it. Hai Yunfan waved his hand. There's no need for that. You just promised me that you'd give me some time off after the tournament officially starts. Now that you've done this, I'm afraid there's no need for that. Wang Lu praised, Little Hai, your thinking is becoming more and more meticulous. He he. Then, Wang Lu gave his master a look, indicating that they would discuss this topic in detail when they had time. Next, he would deal with the official business at hand step by step. By the way, have you finished counting those cross-dressing people that I mentioned before? Wang Wu said, of course, I remember it clearly. How could I lose this kind of black material? More than a month ago, Wang Lu designed a group competition. The loser would have to cross-dress as a punishment. However, when it was actually implemented, due to various reasons, one of the important reasons was that the shocking performance of the King of 10,000 Beasts had brought a serious psychological shadow to everyone. There was no time to organize a large-scale tour for those cross-dressing people. Thus, the effect of the punishment was actually limited. Later on, many people thought that the so-called cross-dressing was just a verbal statement and could not be actually implemented. Thus, their fear of it was put down. In a sense, the progress of the last month's assault did not fully meet the requirements of Wang Lu. However, this certainly did not mean that Wang Lu really intended to let them go. Indeed, the resistance to the implementation of this policy was very, very big. Because according to his design, except for a very small number of geniuses, almost everyone would inevitably be defeated. Could it be that these thousands of elite talents in the 9 regions would have to cross-dress? In particular, it might involve supreme-level cultivators, which was even more difficult to implement. However, it was precisely because of the difficulty of implementation that it should be firmly implemented. If supreme-level cultivators could take the lead in cross-dressing, who else would dare to put up any resistance? Unfortunately, even with the ability of Wang Lu, he failed to persuade He Tu before. After all, there were also many elders in Xingjing's sect who were on the cross-dressing list, and he too himself was also under a lot of pressure. However, at that time, Wang Lu was fighting alone. Now, he had his master by his side, and her ability to act was quite vigorous. Wang Wu had clearly recorded down all the people who had lost in the previous classification competition, so that when she had the time later, she could look for them to settle the accounts in detail. There was a lot of room for arbitrage here. According to Wang Lu's rules, those who were defeated in the group competition had to cross-dress. If they were defeated in the senior group, the punishment would be tripled. Then, how should the benchmark number be defined? How should the so-called tripling be implemented? At present, the more mature plan was to include the cross-dressing people in the negative incentive group of the cheerleaders. If they lost once, they would be scheduled to perform in the future. Not long ago, under the vigorous promotion of Wang Wu, this plan was finally acquiesced by Supreme He Tuesday. Then the problem was, performing in the same shameful cross-dressing state, performing in the martial arts competition that countless people paid attention to, and performing in an obscure event with only 2 or 3 spectators were two different concepts. And the ones who decided the performance list of the cheerleaders was, of course, Wang Wu and Wang Lu, the pair of master and disciple. In Wang Wu's view, the operating space here was all profit space. As long as those who were quick-witted gave Wang Wu a piece of their heart in time, then the task on the performance list could be a bit easier. And those who didn't know how to appreciate favors could only perform the wonderful cross-dressing in front of thousands of people. After the two discussed the details of the performance, they instructed Xiaofan to draft a notice, asking those who were on the cross-dressing list to accurately understand the spirit of the superior and pay the bribe in full and in time so as not to humiliate themselves. Of course, the words must be vague enough so as not to be caught. Xiaofan was tongue-tied for a long time, but in the end, he was helpless. He buried his head and thought hard about how to write this article that was destined to be nailed to the pillar of historical shame. While Xiaofan was immersed in his work, Wang Wu thought of something and asked. According to you, the big competition arena in the center of the City of Immortals can isolate the inside from the outside. Therefore, you've been away for so long that Bai Zhe couldn't find out. In such a venue, I'm afraid the effect of the cheerleaders can't be reflected. It doesn't matter. When the venue was designed, there was room for the cheerleaders. You can use this as a reason to ask them to open this function, so don't worry. But I remember, according to the work arrangement, before the official start of the competition, I have to trouble your beauty contest group to perform a public performance. How is the preparation going now? Wang Wu patted her chest and said, rest assured, the handsome men and beautiful women have been properly trained and used. Wang Lu asked suspiciously, used? How to use it? Have you used it before? Nonsense, if I don't personally inspect the goods, how can I feel at ease pushing them to the front of the stage? How many have you tested? Wang Wu counted with her fingers and said, the girls have basically been tested, and the men are all exempted. I asked Miao Yan to be in charge of it. Your sense of responsibility is really touching. Wang Wu snorted and said, very well, I'll go and test the men's group. I guarantee that you'll have lush green on top of your head. What do you think? While the two were talking, they heard an angry slap on the table next to them. You two bitches, flirt with each other, go out and do it. Think about how I feel when I haven't seen my Taoist companion for a long time because of my busy official business. Being accused by Xiaofan in such a righteous manner, the master and disciple of non-phase had to flee with laughter. When he walked out of the office, Wang Lu was slightly absent-minded and felt that his shoulder was light for no reason. At this time, it was only 2 days before the start of the grand competition. Most of the training events had stopped, waiting for the contestants to recover their spirit and officially appear on the stage. Therefore, there were not many things that needed him to deal with for a while. This made the chief planner, who had been busy for several months, feel quite uncomfortable. Let's just relax today. According to your idea, I'm afraid we're going to be busy again. Wang Wu patted her disciple on the shoulder and said with emotion. If the plan to delay the opening ceremony could be implemented smoothly, it meant that the people of 9 regions would have more time for training, and as the chief planner, he would naturally be busy. However, at least in these 2 days, he could relax a little. Why don't you come with me to watch the rehearsal of the beauty contest group? We have all the beauties from all over the world here, and they are carefully trained. The previous 2 rehearsals have made many successful cultivators unable to restrain themselves. Wang Lu smiled. And then you catch them in a disgraceful state and then blackmail them for ransom? Wang Wu laughed and said, nonsense. Then let's take a look. Speaking of which, I've been so busy recently that I haven't had the time to pay attention to this beautiful team that has attracted the attention of all the cultivators in the world. It is said that Little Bai has been selected? Wang Wu said, you really don't care about my career. Not to mention Little Bai, even Lu Li and Yao Bear can't run away. I've caught all of them to fill the team, forming a group of girls under Yuanying stage. This is an opportunity to become famous in the world, how could I let outsiders take advantage of it? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was surprised. You're not going to take the opportunity to inspect the goods, are you? Wang Wu asked in reply, when did you become so forgetful? If you want to inspect the goods, I've already inspected them. If I hadn't used the telepathic finger to inspect all the goods in the Ask the Heavens, do you think you could be as free and unfettered as you are now? You would have long been reduced to a vulgar family man like that Hai Yunfan. From inside the room came Hai Yunfan's roar, you two bitches, get away from me. Wang Wu laughed and flew away with Wang Lu on her sword. In midair, she said, let's go see the results of my work. There's a surprise. Wang Lu said helplessly, all right, there's nothing else to do now anyway. It's okay for others, but you actually made Xianghua and Zhu Shiryao change into swimsuits. You're amazing. Huh, what's so difficult about it? Yao is the most innocent. I told her that this is a mystical cultivation method, and she believed me. As for Xianghua, I had a sword fight with her, and after I won, she agreed to cooperate with me. Wang Lu thought about it and felt that this guy really knew how to effectively grasp the weaknesses of human nature. Of course, on the other hand, the weaknesses of those girls were too obvious and easy to grasp. Anyway, you've seen the performance. Next, I have a few small things that I need your help with. Wang Lu's heart trembled. Did you think that the performance just now was a bribe to me? And then you expect me to use my authority as the chief planner to help you for personal gain? Wang Wu said, it's not a bribe, it's a threat. So, the reason why I wasn't allowed to appear in the audience during the entire performance was because you didn't tell them that I would be coming? Well, it makes sense. If they knew that there were men in the audience, they probably wouldn't have been so bold in their performance. I thought it was because you trained them well, but it turns out that it was a trap. So, if you don't want to be killed by those girls, you'd better cooperate. Wang Lu thought for a moment. If that's the case. Alright, then the budget of your splendid hall will be halved. Especially the procurement projects, they will be submitted to me for approval before they can be implemented. Wang Wu's beautiful face turned pale. Are you trying to kill me together? That's right, I've never negotiated with terrorists. Either you stop, or you die together. In any case, if the girls come looking for me, I'll just take responsibility for them. When the time comes, it'll be your head that's dyed green. Wang Wu touched her head and gritted her teeth. You're ruthless enough. After solving this episode, Wang Lu returned to his office in the sunset. Although it was only half a day's time, the leisure in the beautiful hall made him feel refreshed. Only in this way could he better cope with the situation in the last 2 days. There were still 2 days before the grand competition, but the entire 9 regions had become tense. Wang Lu was in the valley behind Royal Soldier Sect, isolated from the rest of the world. However, the smell of gunpowder seemed to linger in his nose. The lava valley of Royal Soldier Sect was the training ground for many fighting groups. In the past few days, the atmosphere was particularly tense. Many cultivators were like prisoners on death row. They had finished their training early and sat cross-legged in the valley to meditate, as if they were facing death calmly, waiting for their punishment. Unfortunately, this time, everyone's expectation will probably fall short. Thinking of the victory and defeat in the City of Immortals a few days ago, Wang Lu felt that if those men of sacrifice who were unafraid of death really went on the stage, they would really die without a burial place as they wished. In just 3 months of preparation time, even if all the mechanisms were used, it would still be difficult to make up for the difference between 9 regions cultivators and Dixian cultivators. Therefore, all the means that could be used now must be used, even if the side effects were great. Wang Lu sat down and then began to write the plan for the opening ceremony 2 days later. This time, he didn't even need Hai Yunfan to write. Hai Yunfan was thinking hard about the plan for cross-dressing. And with only 2 days before the opening ceremony, Wang Lu could not afford to waste time. The plan was completed in one go. In just a cup of tea's time, the tens of thousands of words manuscript had been freshly produced. The speed of Taoist Master King Pil's hand was far better than that of ordinary people, not to mention that Wang Lu basically used a spell. After thinking about the wording in his mind, the paper was full of ink. After writing the manuscript, Wang Lu didn't have time to proofread it, nor did he intend to polish it. He directly sealed it in his pocket and then took the manuscript with him to Xingjing sect through the transmission array of Royal Soldier sect. His transmission array was specially authorized to go directly to the core of the sect. As soon as he left Royal Soldier sect, he went directly to Hichu Doran's study room. There were only a few people in the entire 9 regions who had this honor. Wang Lu's amazing performance in this grand competition really made his status advance by leaps and bounds. In the study room, Hichu Doran was facing a map of 9 regions in silence. Sensing that Wang Lu had come in, Hichu raised his head and a smile appeared on his face. "What's the matter?" To be able to make Supreme Hichu, who had always been serious and strict, show such kind countenance was a privilege that even Xiaofan Fairy did not have. Therefore, many 9 regions cultivators were speculating about what kind of secret Wang Lu and Hichu had. Was it related to this matter that Hichu had been single for many years? Or perhaps Wang Lu's eyebrows seemed to be vaguely similar to Hichu's when he was young. In fact, the two of them certainly had no secret. Hichu was more friendly to Wang Lu than to Xiaofan, not because he valued Wang Lu more than Xiaofan. After all, Wang Lu was just an outsider. It was just because Wang Lu's temperament was somewhat amenable to coaxing but not coercion, while Xiaofan preferred to do official business. Therefore, Hichu just treated Wang Lu in the most correct way. He was the leader of Xingjing sect, the number 1 sect in 9 regions. At the same time, he was also the leader of the Wuxia League, which needed to look at 9 regions and seek the welfare of hundreds of millions of cultivators. In many people's view, the so-called Wuxia League was just a prop used by the high-rank sects to suppress 9 regions, and the leader of the Wuxia League only considered the interests of a very small number of people. However, he too had never thought of it that way. In his position, he was very serious in everything he did. Therefore, when he thought that Xiaofan could inherit his mantle and lead Xingjing sect to continue to be the leader of the immortal cultivation world in the future, he stood his ground and spared no effort to support her. He taught her the most brilliant method, gave her the almost supreme kill immortal sword, and mobilized all the resources of the sect to train her into an otherworldly fairy. This was the decision of the leader of Xingjing sect. Similarly, when he determined that Wang Lu could shine in this grand competition and play an irreplaceable role, he would also spare no effort to help him. He gave him all the conveniences within his authority. It was not that he liked Wang Lu, but because as the leader of the Wuxia League, he thought that this was more beneficial to the Wuxia League. However, after reading Wang Lu's proposal, this supreme who had deep confidence in Wang Lu frowned slightly and remained silent. After a long time, Hichu asked, 2 days, no, now it's only a day and a half. To meet the above conditions, we have to make a big move. Wang Lu said, then let's make a big move. Isn't the establishment of this organizing committee to lead and integrate the resources of 9 regions so that we can make a big move when needed? For the grand competition, no matter how big the price is, we have to pay. He too thought for a while and then looked at the manuscript in his hand. The key to the problem is not us. Wang Lu said, yes, no matter how big of a battle we set up and how many programs we prepare, if the other party refuses to accept this long opening ceremony, it would be meaningless. But I have thought about this, it's just that some things are not convenient to put in words. Hichu repeated, not convenient to put in words? Then do you know what kind of pressure you have to bear? Wang Lu said with a smile, what kind of treatment have I enjoyed in the past few months? Rights and obligations always match each other. I still have this awareness. He too nodded with relief. Very well, then I approve it. Just do it. With that, the golden seal, which symbolized the supreme authority of the Wanxian League, was printed on Wang Lu's manuscript. A new week has begun, first update on Monday. Please follow me on WeChat, search for the previous Spirit Sword Mountain, and also ask for a few recommendation votes and monthly votes. By the way, I'm really about to be trampled to death. Come and help me. Ah, which son of AB*TCH deliberately stepped on my face? The little son of AB*TCH who deliberately stepped on the two people's faces, with a smirk on his face, slid through the sea of people while holding a silk bag in his hand. The boy's name was Shu Si, 14 years old, and he was a refugee in Plentiful City. A few years ago, he came to Plentiful City with a group of traveling merchants. Later, the traveling merchants left, but he stayed and did some short-term work in various shops in the suburbs of the city. Although Shu Si was not tall, his limbs were slender, and his pair of clever hands were the most flexible. Some merchants took pity on him because his parents died when he was young, so they gave him some errands from time to time. But soon people found that although this boy's hands were clever, he was skillful in stealing things. The place where he worked would always inexplicably lose something. It might not be very precious, but it always made the shop unlucky. Shu Si's hands and feet were nimble. He did not leave any evidence in Plentiful City for more than half a year, but no shop was willing to give him anything. Having lost his proper livelihood, Shu Si simply became a gangster and seriously engaged in the pickpocketing business. He became a disciple of a gangster boss in the suburbs. Relying on his cleverness, he lived a comfortable life. He always knew who he could touch and who he could not touch. In particular, he saw several of his companions who were blind enough to provoke immortal cultivators. Their limbs were broken on the spot, and even half of their 3 souls and 7 spirits were hooked away. He was even more cautious in doing things. He would rather have less harvest and be sprayed by the gangster boss than be refined into a demonic tool, which was worse than death. However, in the past 2 days, the situation in Plentiful City changed. A large number of people came, and the orderly situation in the past was no longer there. Seeing the opportunity, Shu Si boldly made his move and gained some harvest. Especially on this day when the entrance of the group of immortal tombs was fully opened, the city was filled with people. Many monitoring arrays were overwhelmed and failed. In order to maintain the basic order, the city launched a sealing array, restricting the cultivators from using their cultivation base at will. Thus, these gangsters were even more unrestrained and lawless in the city. Just like the 2 Shudan stage cultivators just now, when it came to strength, they could casually stretch out a finger and crush 100 Shu Si to death. But now, they could only be stuck in the crowd, and their mustard seed bag was stolen by an ant-like little thief. Shu Si, how's the harvest? At this time, Shu Si was hiding in a corner, weighing the mustard seed bag. Suddenly, he heard the voice of his companion. He turned around and saw that it was his scoundrel friend. The youth was delighted. He lifted the corner of his gown and saw more than 10 brocade pouches that were exquisitely tied inside. His companion sucked in a mouthful of cold air. How dare you? These are all cultivators' things, aren't you afraid that they'll track you down and hook your soul? Shu Si chuckled. Who would want to find a cultivator who could hook people's soul? I'm a fool. Don't look at those cultivators who are so high and mighty. In fact, there are many idiots among them. Many of them have cultivated to the point that they became stupid, so they don't have any awareness of defense. You just hide and wait for them to make your move, you'll be fine. His companion was envious. I don't have your courage. But, you can't open these cultivators' things, so what's the use of them? If I can't open them, someone else can. Have you forgotten that dead face in the west of the city? He only accepts cultivators' things. Moreover, once you give them to him, it has nothing to do with you, and absolutely no one will look for you. But dead face went through the door. Xu Si was suddenly dumbfounded. Huh? He went through that big stone door. The so-called big stone door naturally referred to the entrance of the group of immortal tombs. This door was usually only open to cultivators with the permission of the excavation management. As for the mortals of Plentiful City, although they could see the towering magnificent door every day and night, they never had the chance to go in and see its true appearance. In the past few days, a lot of people have gone to that big stone door. In addition to Dead Face, there's also that old Taoist in green and peach blossom lady. Xu Si was even more dumbfounded. Why did all the people who are willing to harvest leave? However, the youth immediately rolled his eyes and made a decision. That's right, I'm going too. You're going too? His companion was stunned. What are you going to do? Boss said that no one is allowed to go in. Be careful not to cause trouble and implicate everyone. Xu Si spat out, that useless coward, listen to his fart. He even implicates everyone. When I found the spirit stones and exchanged them with Dead Face, how come he's not afraid of implicating everyone? I'm going. I heard that the big stone door is full of immortals. If there's an immortal who likes me, even if he doesn't accept me as a disciple, he can just give me 2 immortal elixirs, and I don't need to be a gangster anymore. In your dreams. Humph, didn't you hear a few days ago in the tea house, an expert said that if people don't have dreams, what's the difference between them and salted fish? Salted fish can be eaten, but can people eat it? Xu Si narrowed his eyes and didn't speak. The taste of human flesh was actually not that novel. After a while, he said with a smile, in any case, I'm going. If you follow me, when the time comes, we can become immortals together. But even if you don't follow me, later on, when I become an immortal, I will not forget your benefits. His companion knew that he had made up his mind, so he no longer tried to persuade him. Alas, I wish you good luck. Relying on his flexible skill, Xu Si forced his way through the crowded crowd and finally arrived at the entrance of the group of immortal tombs in the evening. This gate, which had been continuously expanded, was now several miles wide. Its top towered into the sky, like the mouth of a giant prehistoric beast, constantly devouring thousands of creatures. Xu Si swallowed his saliva in front of the gate and then mixed into the crowd to enter. Behind the gate was a brand new world. The second update has been sent. Thank you, Great Alliance leaders. Piao Hong reward. By the way, continue to ask for WeChat's attention, search for Spirit Sword Mountain or His Majesty the King. Please help promote the WeChat platform, thank you. Chapter 625. Xu Si had never seen such a vast world. In Plentiful City, the teenager was used to seeing the means of cultivators. Once, he was fortunate to see a righteous cultivator slaying demons and devils on the outskirts of the city. A fire talisman scorched half of the sky. However, no matter which time, it was difficult to compare with what he saw at this moment. This is the real immortal means. The teenager swallowed hard and then rubbed his eyes hard. For a long time, he thought that the square built around the big stone gate in the center of Plentiful City was magnificent enough, it occupied more than 10 miles of area and could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. The ground was clean and flawless, just like a bright mirror. However, compared with the situation in the Tomb of Immortals, it paled in comparison. The place where Shu Si stood was a white and flawless high platform. The high platform supported the entrance of the gate, and then the long steps went all the way down to a square that could not be seen at a glance. The square was extremely vast, like a new and independent world. The ground bricks were all made of fine jade. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single crack in the dozens of miles radius. This was a huge jade that could not exist in 9 regions. It was so huge and vast that the crowded crowd in plentiful city seemed sparse when scattered on the square. At the end of the square, there was also a daunting huge shadow that covered the sky. Shu Si swallowed a mouthful of saliva and guessed that it was the city of immortals that people flocked to like ducks. Dead Face, the old Taoist in green, and Peach Blossom Lady went there? While thinking about it, Shu Si walked down the steps quickly. He was flexible and his steps were light. However, after all, he was a mortal. From time to time, he saw figures passing by him and overtaking him as fast as lightning. More of them directly flew up to the sky as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, they only left a shadow on the horizon. Shu Si was quite envious. He thought that it would be great if he could seek immortal fate here and learn to fly up and down like those people. Thinking of this, even his posture of going down the steps became a bit more serious, fantasizing that there would be a blind person who would suddenly take a fancy to him. Walking on the pure white square of holy glory, Shu Si was initially excited, but he quickly calmed down. After walking for an hour, from jogging to walking slowly, Shu Si felt that his legs were a bit sore, but the main point, the city of immortals, was still out of reach. Looking back, the huge stone door seemed to have moved a long way away. Looking around, those cultivators who were displaying their magical abilities couldn't arouse his excitement. In fact, there was nothing to be excited about, he had already seen many of them in plentiful city. After walking for another hour, about an hour, since there was no sky to see in this group of immortal tombs, Shu Si could only estimate the time. In short, when his stomach began to growl, he was still far from his destination. The young man was finally somewhat frustrated. After all, this group of immortal tombs was not a place for mortals. It was rumored that there were endless delicacies in the city of immortals, as well as warm and bright bedrooms, but it would be extremely difficult for a mere mortal to even walk into the city. Shu Si stopped and looked around. When he saw that not far away in front of him, there was a group of hungry refugees who simply set up camp in the square. Even the smoke from the kitchen rose. Shu Si secretly admired the courage of these people. To set up a campsite in such a holy place, they were not afraid of being beheaded by a cultivator who couldn't stand it. However, on the other hand, the teenager was also very hungry. He carried more than 10 mustard seed bags of cultivators, but he didn't bring any dry food. He had treasures, but he had to starve. When Shu Si thought of this, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. The next moment, he held up a mustard seed bag and then boldly shouted, "Is there anyone who would like to give me a ride? I would like to thank you with this thing." While shouting, Shu Si felt that he must have gone crazy. According to common sense, cultivators rarely responded to the call of mortals. However, this time, as soon as Shu Si's voice fell, he saw a huge shadow fall from the sky and shrouded him. Then, a big black bird slowly flapped its wings and landed. On the back of the bird, a man with a full beard stared at the mustard seed bag in Shu Si's hand with his big bell-like eyes. "You want someone to give you a ride? In exchange for this mustard seed bag?" Being looked at by that man's powerful eyes, Shu Si shrunk his neck. "Yes, yes." The man on the bird nodded. "Come on up." Shu Si froze for a moment, then quickly grabbed the rough and stiff hair on the black bird's neck, dexterously climbed up, and then lay down behind the big man, firmly clinging to the bird's back. The big man looked back at him and laughed. "You're a clever boy. Your posture is correct, then sit tight." Wuxia inwardly said, "If you really like my cleverness, then take me as your disciple. Although your half-body animal skin and the black bird under your crotch can't be compared with those sword cultivators with white robes and flying swords, it's fate that we meet. I'm really not that picky." Unfortunately, the big man didn't say a word after that. He grabbed the black bird's mane, causing a strange cry, and then flew straight up to the sky. The strong wind pressure of the giant bird made Wuxia feel so uncomfortable that he almost couldn't breathe. However, when the speed stabilized, he boldly straightened up and looked around, which was too beautiful to behold. This was the first time Wuxia flew. Although he was a bit afraid of heights, it was more difficult to hide his excitement. This was his first immortal opportunity. The uncle riding the bird was really a good person. Not only did he not ask about the origin of his mustard seed bag, but he also kindly took him to fly. Although Wuxia also knew that this was a profitable business for the uncle, it was fate that the two of them met like this. Along the way, the giant bird flew as fast as lightning in the clouds. Before long, it had crossed the holy white square and landed in front of the City of Immortals. As for the City of Immortals, it was another kind of atmosphere. Wuxia looked at the people coming and going in front of the city gate, and his heart was already burning. However, he still remembered what he had to do. He took out the mustard seed bag from his lapel and respectfully handed it to the big man. "Immortal, this is for you." The big man glanced at him but didn't take the bag. He was silent for a long time, and then a slightly strange smile appeared on his face. "Immortal?" the teenager asked curiously. The big man finally couldn't help but laugh. "Immortal? I haven't heard anyone call me that for a long time. It seems that you're really just a mortal who doesn't know anything." Wuxia guessed inwardly, could it be that the man riding the bird actually had no status in the immortal cultivation world? In other words, he only appeared powerful in front of a mortal like him? However, it didn't matter. It should be known that before this, the upper limit of the teenager's ideal was that dead face who mingled with mortals. And dead face was not as powerful as this uncle riding the bird. Thinking of this, the teenager said, "Although I don't know anything, I know that Immortal has a kind heart. When I asked for help in the square, you were the first one to respond. This kind heart, kind heart? Ha ha ha." The big man looked up and laughed. His voice shook Wuxia's heart. It was just that, strangely, the people around him didn't notice it. "Kid, you're the first one to say that I have a kind heart. Hee, the Black Wing King of Hell has actually become a benevolent immortal. If this gets out, I'm afraid all my brothers in the Blood Prison Cliff will laugh to death." Wuxia was dumbfounded. He incredulously looked at the big man in front of him who gradually changed his shape. He watched as horns grew out of his messy hair, fangs emerged from his lips, and in the blink of an eye, the forthright big man turned into a dark devil. Even though he had always been astute, he never expected that the immortal opportunity that he was looking forward to would actually bump into a devil. Moreover, it was a big devil who carried a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, a devil who killed without blinking an eye. At this time, Wuxia remembered that the black boss in the suburbs had nagged at him. These days, Fengdu City is very chaotic. In addition to those cultivators, it is said that there are also a lot of evil cultivators who have come. When people are not paying attention, they will catch people and eat them. You must not go out and stir up trouble. At that time, he also laughed at the black boss for living more and more backward, but unexpectedly, "Kid, it is reasonable to say that in the territory of the Wuxian League, evil cultivators need to restrain themselves. But if I don't accept snacks that are delivered to my door, this father's thoughts are not clear." As he spoke, he raised one of his arms. His original 5 fingers had turned into sharp claws, and the nails were emitting a faint blue light. Obviously, they were highly toxic. Xu Si trembled all over, and he suppressed his fear and said, "Great Immortal, don't kill me. I have a lot of such bags here." With that, he pulled out all the mustard seed bags in his clothes and threw them in front of the big man. However, the big man didn't look at the bags and just said, "If I kill you, these things will belong to me. Moreover, this father doesn't care about the righteous cultivator's things. I just want to take your soul and refine it into a treasure. Great Immortal, spare my life, Great Immortal, spare my life." Xu Si knelt down on the back of the bird and loudly begged for mercy. In fact, he also hoped that many people nearby could hear him. Under the watchful eyes of the public, so many cultivators would not let a devil of the evil path do whatever he wanted, right? Wasn't it said that 9 regions was still the world of the righteous path's Wanxian League? Don't be delusional. When you get on my bird's back, it's like you're in my belly. You're covered by my breath, so no one can see you. Moreover, even if they can see you, who would go against my blood prison cliff for a little bastard like you? This father is the official candidate for the grand competition, so every move is related to the future of 9 regions. For the sake of the entire 9 regions, I don't mind eating a few living people, ha 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 ha. With that, the big man stretched out his claw to pierce the teenager's forehead and dig out his brain. However, at this time, a flash of pink lightning fell from the sky. The Black Wing King of Hell only had time to raise his head in great surprise before the lightning fell on his body. His burly body suddenly shook. Then, his head separated from his neck. There was even no blood at the stump, but the huge body disappeared in a puff of smoke. The black bird under the big man uttered a mournful wail and then fell to the ground, not daring to move. Lying on the back of the black bird, Xu Si was still trembling. The change in front of him was so fast that it had completely exceeded his ability to understand. Why did the Black Wing King of Hell die? What was the pink lightning that fell from the sky? He couldn't think about it and didn't dare to think about it. He only hoped that what greeted him would not be hell. In his fear, he heard a young voice, and the tone was full of displeasure. The IQ of this group of evil cultivators is really worrying. They openly commit murder in the security check at the city gate, and they think that no one can see it. This is definitely a kind of vulgarity in disguise, right? Or do they look down on my security check design? Moreover, at this juncture where the opening ceremony is about to begin, do you think my determination to maintain stability is a joke? Let alone a mere blood prison cliff, even if your superior department, the Blood Shadow School, dares to cause trouble, this father will still bring people to flatten it. As he spoke, a young man in a red and white robe descended from the sky. He stretched out his hand to summon a pink dagger and hung it on his waist. He then looked at Xu Si with a playful gaze, as if trying to guess his identity. Are you, this guy's lover? Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform in the future. If there is a Dota 2 Water Friend match, the news will be posted on the platform. Search for His Majesty the King or the previous Spirit Sword Mountain. Thank you for your support. Chapter 626. This was a dimly lit secret room. After the Black Wing King of Hell was killed, Xu Si was brought here by the young man in red and white. He didn't even know where this secret room was built. When he came here, he was grabbed by the shoulder by the other party, and then in a flash, he inexplicably appeared here. The cultivator in red and white asked him to sit down, made him tea, brought him snacks, and then asked about the situation just now. It took Xu Si some time to explain his situation. Oh, you mean you don't know him, and you just want to hitch a ride, but as a result, you almost put your life on the line? So, you're really not his lover? Of course not. Xu Si was simply ashamed and indignant. He wished that he could slap the table and stand up to prove his innocence. However, when he thought of how this seemingly young cultivator in red and white robes had turned the incomparably awe-inspiring Black Wing King of Hell into ashes with just one sword strike, this slippery young man couldn't muster up any courage. Thus, the teenager had to euphemistically lament, "If I'm really his lover, why would I need to worry about being eaten? You don't understand. These evil cultivators are the most abnormal. The so-called lover is actually a snack that they carry with them. And according to them, the one that has just been used is more delicious, probably similar to the feeling of cream sandwich bread." Xu Si said, "Although I don't understand what you're talking about, I always feel disgusted." The cultivator in red and white patted him on the shoulder with a chuckle and said, "In any case, welcome to the city of immortals. Although you're just a mortal, there will be a place for you in this city. Believe me, this will be a feast that belongs to the cultivators and mortals of 9 regions." Xu Si nodded somewhat ignorantly. He didn't have much experience, so he couldn't hear the hidden message in the words of the cultivator in front of him. He just thought that the young man's tone was very big. He said welcome to the city of immortals, and also a feast for the grand competition, just like the master of the city of immortals. It sounded very strange. However, the young cultivator in red and white was obviously very busy. After saying that, he got up and was ready to leave. "Take your time playing here. I still have to patrol around to maintain stability, so I won't accompany you." Before leaving, the red and white cultivator gave him a small compass and said, "Recite the name and appearance of the person you're looking for, then follow the compass. The dead face you want to see is in area A17. Xu Si took the compass in a daze. Then, he saw the red and white figures disappear in a flash. At the same time, a dazzling door opened on the side of the secret chamber. The teenager walked in with the compass in his hand. As soon as he stepped out, the light receded and he saw a bustling crowd in front of him. He was already in the city of immortals, but behind him was an empty space. Where was the shadow of the secret room? Xu Si pinched his thigh fiercely to convince himself that he wasn't daydreaming. There really was a young and handsome cultivator who saved his life from the hands of the Black Wing King of Hell and kindly gave him a treasure. Thinking of this, Xu Si hurriedly looked at the compass in his hand. This was undoubtedly an immortal tool, which was priceless in the mortal world. For a moment, the teenager couldn't make up his mind whether he should keep this compass forever or simply sell it to Dead Face along with the more than 10 mustard seed bags in his clothes. However, thinking of the friendly smile of the red and white immortal just now, especially the tea and desserts that were personally brewed for him, Xu Si, who had always been greedy for cheap, could not persuade himself to hand over this small gift. This was an immortal opportunity that belonged to him alone. Money could be earned, but immortal opportunity could not be sought. Thinking of this, Xu Si saw the thin pointer on the compass, which was now leaning to one side. In that direction was a long and empty corridor. The corridor was more than 10 meters high, and at every certain distance, there was a sign hanging from the top, indicating the place ahead. A17. Xu Si frowned and barely recognized a few neat characters on it. Is Dead Face there? While muttering, the teenager walked quickly along the direction of the compass. However, halfway there, he was shocked. When did I tell anyone that I'm looking for Dead Face? Area A17 was an area with complex levels. The space of several miles was divided into 10 upper and lower floors. Each floor was neatly separated with hundreds of houses for the people who came to watch the battle. At this time, most of them were still empty and uninhabited. Xu Si boldly pushed open an empty door, and then saw that there was a key in his hand, and there was a sign of someone living outside the door. There were 2 rooms and 1 living room inside the door. The layout was compact but not crowded, and the decoration was simple but exquisite. However, what made Xu Si most stunned was that there were fragrant dishes on the dining table in the hall. There were chicken, duck, fish, and meat, and they were all steaming hot, as if they were freshly cooked. It really is the means of an immortal. That idiot Mao Lao Sen should really come with me. Just for this meal, it's not in vain, ha ha ha. Xu Si wolfed down his food until his belly was round. After he finished eating, the leftovers on the table disappeared automatically. The teenager stretched out and wanted to sleep in bed for a while, but when he saw that the compass on the table was still pointing straight outside, he remembered that he still had business to do. Following the guidance of the compass, the teenager stopped in front of the door of a room in the corner of the 7th floor. Dead face. Is it here? He reached out and knocked on the door, but before his finger could knock for the second time, the door opened from the inside, and an expressionless, livid face appeared in front of him. Xu Si immediately opened his mouth, revealing a row of neat white teeth. Dead face, I finally found you. The person in the room rolled his eyes and then said in a hoarse voice, Little mouse, how did you find me here? Xu Si smiled and said, It's a long story. You can't imagine what I've experienced along the way. With that said, he came directly through the door from the side of the dead face and sat down on the armchair in the hall. You feel a little more spacious here than I do. Dead face didn't stop him. He just silently closed the door, then turned around and asked, What are you doing here? Xu Si raised his eyebrows, What else can I do for you? Of course, it's to do business. With that, he took out more than a dozen mustard seed bags. Dead face snorted, The harvest is quite a lot. Don't you know what kind of person Grandpa Mouse is? Xu Si introduced the origin of these mustard seed bags with great joy, especially exaggeratedly showing off how he cleverly played with the high and mighty cultivators in the palm of his hand. However, after a while, seeing that the other party didn't respond at all, Xu Si wiped his mouth and said, Dead face, how much do you think these things are worth? 100 taels, a total of 13 bags, a total of 1,300 taels. For the vagrants in the suburbs, 1,300 taels of silver was an unimaginable wealth. Although the little mouse knew that the bags of these cultivators were definitely worth more than this, he still happily took the banknotes from Dead face. Silver and goods are settled, we'll see you later. With that, Xu Si took out the compass and began to find his way home. At this moment, the dead-faced man's expression suddenly changed. Where did you get this compass? Xu Si said, Of course, it was given by someone. Who? As Dead face spoke, he had already walked in front of Xu Si, and his two gray eyes shot out a light. Who gave it to you? Xu Si felt a slight chill in his heart and took 2 steps back. What are you going to do? I'm telling you, if you dare to conspire against me, the person who gave me the compass will definitely find you. Dead face froze for a moment and then slowed down his tone. What does that person look like? About in his early 20s, taller than you, wearing a red and white robe, with a pink dagger on his waist. The more Dead face listened, the more surprised he became. Finally, he even widened his eyes. His facial muscles, which hadn't moved for many years, continued to twitch, but he suddenly didn't feel it. Red and white robe, pink dagger. Don't tell me the person you've seen looks like this? Dead face said, took out a picture book, opened one of the pages, and saw the young cultivator who just warmly received Xu Si was smiling brightly in the picture book. Xu Si's eyes lit up. Yes, it's him. Do you know him? Dead face sighed, how many cultivators in the City of Immortals don't know him? It's just, why would such a big man waste his time on you? The young man didn't care so much. Ha ha ha, maybe it's because I'm handsome? At the same time, in the center of the City of Immortals in Immortal 1 area, in a courtyard near the main arena, an old man walked around in a hurry that was completely inconsistent with his age, looking impatient and uneasy. When the courtyard door creaked open, he immediately turned his head and was unable to restrain his anger. "Wang Lu, where did you go just now?" The young cultivator in red and white robe smiled apologetically. "Hello, second uncle, I'm sorry I'm late. I just wandered around the city on a whim to maintain stability." "You? At this time, you still have the mind to wander around?" The second elder of Heavenly Sword Hall, Lu Xian, glared at him. "Moreover, when did you need to come forward to maintain stability? Are the 36,000 golden armored soldiers in the City of Immortals not enough?" Wang Lu shrugged and said, "After all, man-made puppets have their shortcomings. They are inflexible and don't know how to adapt. There are a lot of things that they can't take into account. For example, just now at the city gate security checkpoint, I got rid of an evil for the 9 regions." Lu Xian suspiciously said, "Got rid of an evil?" "Yes, a birdman called Blackwing King of Hell did evil in public, so his 3 souls and 7 spirits were destroyed by my sword." Lu Xian froze for a moment, and then angrily said, "Isn't that the official contestant of this grand competition? Moreover, it's the main beast tamer of the beast taming competition." Wang Lu said, "No wonder my sword strike only made me feel fat and juicy and rich in experience. It turned out to be an elite monster. Don't play dumb with me, what the hell is going on?" Wang Lu then simply explained what happened at the city gate. At that time, there were no reliable passers-by around, so they didn't notice that he was going to commit cannibalism. Although the security check detected the abnormality, because he was an official contestant, it automatically exempted him. This was the rule that some evil cultivator elders insisted on joining. Today, they finally saw the result. Lu Xian helplessly said, "To let those evil cultivators join this grand competition and borrow their strength, it is necessary to compromise in some places." Wang Lu said, "Yes, so I didn't change the security check procedure, but they can't control me as a warm-hearted and chivalrous person, right? Moreover, the dignified King Pill King of Hell, who has been cultivating for more than 100 years, couldn't even catch a sword strike from a junior like me, so he deserved to die." Lu Xian was amused and laughed. Nowadays, in 9 regions, there were not many people in the King Pill stage who could catch a sword strike from Wang Lu. Moreover, if that birdman doesn't die, those evil cultivators would be more rampant. They really think that we would be afraid to shoot at the rat for fear of breaking the vases in the grand competition. Today, we can kill one as an example to others, so that they would know how to be honest, so that I don't have to kill more people in the future when they cause big trouble. Lu Xian thought about it and found that it was indeed reasonable, so he asked, "What about the child you saved?" After a little investigation, I found that he was just an insignificant mortal hooligan, so I just gave him a novice suit and let him fend for himself in the city. However, I always felt that I was quite predestined with that boy, so I put a small spell on him." As Wang Lu said that, he remembered that he had asked the old man Feng Yin for divination not long ago. That old and dim-sighted sect leader was quite serious about the stars, and then told him that it was best to go out and do chivalrous deeds before the opening ceremony, and then there was the scene of the city gate maintaining stability. While he was thinking, the courtyard door opened again, and a tall and burly golden-armored man informed him in a stiff tone, "It's time for the opening ceremony. Asking for recommendation votes, asking for attention on the WeChat public platform, search for His Majesty the King. The situation of the Water Friends match on the New Year's Day will be updated in real time on WeChat." Chapter 627. The arena in the center of the City of Immortals was already crowded with people. This large arena, which could accommodate the fight between true immortals, had been transformed into a huge stage. The space within a radius of thousands of miles was highly compressed and became an elastic stage with a diameter of less than 1 mile. The folded space around the stage was surrounded by seats that could accommodate millions of spectators, which were now almost full. Being in the folded space, when watching the performance, one could freely adjust their position and watch from various angles. Of course, the range of position adjustment would be different for different seats. Those who were invited as important guests usually had a higher level of seat. And the highest level of seat here was on the rostrum. It was also the place where the representatives of Dixian and 9 regions cultivators were seated. When Wang Lu arrived, on one side of the rostrum, the Dixian team was already in place. On the 9 regions side, he too and the other supremes had already taken their seats. Many of them glared at the newcomer. Wang Lu, this kid, had the youngest seniority and the lowest cultivation base. Because of a momentary opportunity, he relied on his arrogance and was almost late for such an important occasion. How could people not be annoyed? Especially at today's opening ceremony, Wang Lu clearly shouldered a very important mission, which was the envy of many people, yet he didn't take it seriously. After Wang Lu took his seat, on the Dixian side, the leader Xian Mo nodded slightly to He Tu and asked if they could start. He Tu nodded with a smile. Thus, the light in the arena suddenly bloomed, as if a scorching sun was ignited. Although the light was fleeting, it successfully attracted everyone's attention. When the crowd fixed their eyes on it, they saw that the arena was covered with trees and gurgling streams. And in the embrace of this green mountain and clear water, a piece of flat fragrant grass was the official stage of the opening ceremony. At the same time, in the City of Immortals, the signboards that were hung everywhere to guide the direction changed their content. The signboards showed the scene in the arena, so that those who didn't have time to enter the arena or couldn't find a seat could see the situation in the arena at any time and anywhere. Although it was not as detailed as the scene, at least they would not miss the main content. The pedestrians in the City of Immortals stopped and watched. Outside the City of Immortals, all the major immortal cultivation sects in 9 regions, as well as the capitals and imperial cities of the mortal world, there were all kinds of magical tools that were broadcasting everything that happened at this time. For a moment, the 9 states were silent. In the field, a gentle breeze blew across the green mountain, and the rustling sound rendered a tranquil and peaceful atmosphere. Then, amidst the clear wind, a young cultivator stepped on a flying sword and descended from the sky. His speed was very fast, and soon he fell from the clouds to the ground. The moment he landed, the signboards in the City of Immortals, which served as broadcasting boards, gave him a close-up. It was a young man in a red and white robe with a pink short sword at his waist. He was handsome and elegant like a deity. At this moment, countless people were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Wang Lu. In Zone A17, a young man who was watching the opening ceremony from a public square almost had his jaw dislocated. It's him. Regardless of whether they knew Wang Lu or not, they were shocked by his appearance at this time. The first part of the opening ceremony of the grand competition was the leader's speech. Originally, Dixian and 9 regions should each send one person to speak, but Dixian politely declined, saying that he had no intention of participating in the opening performance. Obviously, for them, this was a farce that was meant to please the public, and the sooner it ended, the better. However, the 9 regions side attached great importance to this. Therefore, it was reasonable to say that Supreme He too should give a speech on the stage. He was the leader of the Wanxian League and the #1 Supreme in 9 regions who was the closest to Mahayana stage. No one was more suitable than him. And on this occasion, who else but he too could speak on behalf of 9 regions? However, at this moment, the person standing on the stage was Wang Lu, the young boy whose cultivation base was only King Pill. How could he do that? On the rostrum, the Supremes who had long known that there would be such a scene shook their heads and sighed. Then, they glanced at he too, feeling particularly puzzled by the favoritism of the #1 person in 9 regions. No matter how optimistic they were about Wang Lu, he too's decision was far beyond the necessary level, at the same time, under the watchful eyes of the public, Wang Lu restrained his usual relaxed posture and his face became serious. Hello, everyone, I am Wang Lu, from the Wanxian League, Lingjian School. I am entrusted by Supreme He Tu to give the opening speech as the representative of 9 regions. With that, he bowed deeply. When he looked up, his handsome face was full of sincerity. Standing here is not because I have high virtue and talent. 9 regions is a big place, and there are many people who are better and stronger than me. When Supreme He Tu entrusted me to give a speech, I once felt that it was difficult for me to shoulder the heavy responsibility. However, Supreme told me that a series of things in the Tomb of Immortals happened because of me, so I should give everyone an explanation. On the other hand, as the chief planner of the grand competition, I do have some words to share with you about this grand competition. At that time, a few high-level elders of the Wanxian League who knew the truth fully respected the choice of Lingjian School and did not spread the news that they killed the fallen immortal. Now that the truth was revealed, it immediately caused a great shock. As a survivor, Lingjian School is very clear about the power of the fallen immortal. 150 years ago, it was only a vanguard scout who came to Blue River region, but it was enough to make one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League collapse. Moreover, there was no surrender, no compromise, and there was no possibility of coexistence between them. Only one side could be exterminated. This has been proved by Lingjian School at the price of blood. However, if there are 2, 3, or even 10 or 100 such opponents, what would happen to 9 regions? How much blood do we have to shed? With that, Wang Lu took a deep breath and said, the group of immortal tombs was established 16,000 years ago. It was before the age of chaos, the era of immortal cultivation. Now, it seems that the legendary Dixian people emerged one after another. However, under the suppression of the fallen immortal, they were forced to go underground from the ground and sleep in the ancient tomb for thousands of years. This is our opponent. They are immortals from the upper realm, with incredible and unmatched magical abilities. They are to us what we are to mortals. In the face of such an enemy, we actually have no more choice. Joining forces is the only choice. It is impossible for any of us to defeat the fallen immortals. Even if the 2 of us join forces, we are not sure to win. However, at this time, going our own way will only make the remaining odds of winning even less. Joining forces, only joining forces is the only way to survive. And this grand competition is precisely for this purpose. When it came to this, Wang Lu paused for a while and then said with a smile, many people have asked me, since we want to cooperate and join forces, why should we design a tit-for-tat stage and increase the anger between the 2 sides? The reason is very simple, because we and the seniors of Dixian are separated by 16,000 years. This period of time is so long that it is difficult for the 2 sides to understand and trust each other. And trust is never based on empty words. There is an old saying in 9 regions that goes, if you don't fight, you won't get to know each other. There are also people who say that men communicate with each other with their fists. Therefore, I want to design such a grand competition so that both sides can show themselves to their heart's content on the field. Strength, wisdom, character, and even everything else will be shown. During this period, there will be frictions, contradictions, and even conflicts. But at least we will know each other and understand each other. When faced with a common threat, we can finally put aside our grudges and join hands. When Wang Lu finished speaking, many people fell into silence. Previously, when the Wanxian League mobilized for the grand competition, it had stirred up the blood of the cultivators, and the hostility against the Dixian was very strong. However, after listening to Wang Lu's speech today, people could not help but gradually change their view. Some of the cultivators who had previously questioned the qualification of Wang Lu also secretly felt somewhat convinced. Just standing on that stage and speaking freely in front of countless pairs of eyes was a rare skill. Not to mention that his speech was logical, well-organized, and sincere, which was really impeccable. Even many people in Dixian secretly nodded their heads, deeply agreeing with Wang Lu's words. In the face of the threat of the fallen immortal, cooperation was inevitable. However, on the basis of lack of understanding and recognition, the so-called cooperation was nothing more than empty talk. Therefore, instead of wasting 10 or even 100 years of time, the two sides cautiously probing each other, it was better to do everything on a grand stage. Finally, Wang Lu said with a smile, "There is a saying in 9 regions that goes, peaceful measures before force. Before the two sides pick up their weapons, we have specially arranged a cultural performance, which is also the theme of today's opening ceremony. Because the so-called art is the sublimation and interpretation of life, and the exchange of art is an effective way to strengthen mutual understanding. Therefore, please be patient and seriously enjoy the performance brought by the 9 regions team." With that, Wang Lu bowed deeply to the audience and was ready to turn around and leave. It was just that, when he leaned down, he could not hide the chuckle on the corner of his mouth. "You have to be patient, okay? Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform. Although only one message can be sent a day, the important information will be released first. Just search for His Majesty the King. You can also pay attention to Sina Weibo, where you can play more." Chapter 628. After Wang Lu's speech aroused people's enthusiasm, the more enthusiastic artistic performance officially began. In this regard, not only the Dixian team was full of curiosity, but even many of the elders of the Wanxian League also leaned forward. The opening ceremony of the grand competition was not the focus of the whole process, and it was only mentioned in 2 or 3 strokes in the proposal book. Thus, people did not pay much attention to it. Previously, it was basically handled by Wang Lu alone, and Wang Lu only reported the situation to Supreme He Tuesday. The other elders did not pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just a dispensable red tape. It was not until this time that they remembered that Wang Lu was good at unconventional swordplay, performing the unusual in the ordinary. This opening ceremony seemed ordinary, but since it was directed by Wang Lu, there must be a hidden surprise. It was just that. What would that surprise be? Not long after, the show officially began. The first to appear was an elegant woman. She walked in from the folded space and stood straight in the center of the stage. Her posture was slightly cramped, her cheeks were slightly red, and she seemed a little nervous. If a person knew that his every move was being watched by millions of people, it was inevitable that he would be nervous. Like Wang Lu, who faced countless eyes and spoke with ease and assurance, it was really a kind of talent that could not be forced. At the same time, the audience was also carefully examining the woman on the stage. They saw that she was dressed in a simple dress, had delicate features, and tightly pursed lips, which still showed a bit of immaturity. After the woman's magical power was married, her stage was about Yuanying stage. However, in today's city of immortals, it was actually insignificant. That beautiful and delicate face was completely unknown to anyone. So, why did Wang Lu arrange such a rookie as the first candidate to appear? However, when the woman finally opened her cherry lips in the long silence and made a sound, people no longer had any doubts. It was hard to describe with words. It was truly the sound of nature. With just one syllable, the long and clear singing attracted all the birds around the stage. Among the green hills and blue waters, hundreds of birds flew together. A group of colorful auspicious clouds landed on the empty grassland. It was like a cluster of flowers, surrounding the woman in the center like the moon surrounded by stars. The moment the woman opened her mouth, she cast aside her shyness and immersed herself in her own world. Melodious syllables rang out one after another, flowing smoothly and without the slightest hint of nervousness. Her singing deepened as the song progressed, permeating the world. At first, it was birds and beasts. Gradually, it extended to flying flowers, falling leaves, and even rocks and rivers. Using her singing to resonate with heaven and earth, the woman demonstrated a mysterious and wonderful realm to the world. Who is this woman? After listening for a while, a perfected cultivator on the rostrum couldn't help but ask. I've never seen it before. Even the true disciples of the exquisite sound sect are far inferior to this kind of talent. That voice can simply penetrate one's heart. Another true monarch sighed with emotion. That's right. I've only heard of some ancient clans possessing such a voice. I didn't expect that the bloodline of those clans had been passed down to this day, but, what is she singing? Although I can feel the emotional resonance in the song, which seems to be describing the feelings of nature, I've never heard of the language of the lyrics. Taoist brother Tianluan, you're the most knowledgeable, what do you think? In the front row of the rostrum, the sect leader of the 10,000 art sect smiled. This is an ancient language. It was an ancient language that was only used before the end of the Age of Chaos. It was usually used to show respect to those above it. It was a very complicated grammar, and could be said to be the most elaborate language. It has long been lost. A few years ago, I found many ancient books in an ancient ruin, and finally managed to decipher this language. From my point of view, although her singing is smooth, the ancient language is actually a bit jerky. However, with the complexity of that language, it's not easy to be able to do this. It's enough to show our friendship and sincerity. On the other side of the rostrum, the reaction of the Dixian people was quite different. Many of them had lost their initial calmness. They stood up from the praying mat and somewhat incredulously looked at the girl on the stage. How could she use this language? Moreover, this song is so clear, not like the voice of the mortal world. This qualification, even in our time, is hard to find. Unexpectedly, as the leader, Xian Mo nodded and sighed. The Wuxia League has indeed shown their etiquette and sincerity. The Dixian people, who were intoxicated by the song, nodded in agreement. This song aroused their great affection, and their gaze toward the Wuxia League cultivators on the other side softened a lot. Only Bai Zhe still disagreed. He vigorously shook his head, but didn't refute it. Instead, he just looked like he was watching a good show. Before long, the woman on the stage finished singing, and the lingering sound reverberated in the air for a long time. The woman took a long breath, opened her eyes, and turned back into the easily nervous little girl. After gawking for a moment, she hurriedly ran off the stage. At this time, the birds that landed on the grass were still intoxicated by the lingering sound of the song and refused to take off. After a long silence, there was a thunderous applause outside the stage. Whether it was the cultivators of the Wuxia League or the Dixian people, they were all amazed by the sound of nature. And Wang Lu, who had been waiting backstage for a long time, patted the shoulder of the woman who had just come down from the stage. Well done, Bai An. You are indeed the descendant of the demon wolf. After transforming, you have awakened the talent of the sound of nature. Your song can reach people's hearts and shake the world. From today onwards, you will be given the name Xiao Tian. TSK, who cares? The woman named Bai An shook her head, then curled up and returned from her human form to the appearance of a gray stupid dog. She curled up in the corner of the backstage and laid down, and even let out a long yawn. Don't forget what you promised me before. When I wake up, you will give me the best meat to eat, and Xiao Bai will also go on a date with me. After saying that, the stupid dog closed her eyes, and the sound of her snoring gradually rose. Wang Lu sighed. It could be said that the affairs of the world were hard to predict. Who would have thought that the stupid mottled dog that was picked up from the savage land was actually a girl with a heavenly singing voice? Since he brought her to the Spirit Sword Mountain, she spent most of her time eating and sleeping. The seventh elder said that this kind of spirit beast was still in the growth period, so it was natural for her to sleep for a long time. He also said that once she finished this growth period, she would have a jaw-dropping leap. As a result, the seventh elder was right. Bai An's leap was really jaw-dropping. Before this, who would have thought that she was actually a female dog? When he was with Bai Shixian, she often entangled behind Xiao Bai, which disturbed the quiet girl. Therefore, Wang Lu even considered giving her an artificial sterilization. It was just that, at that time, he was distracted by external affairs, so he didn't carry it out. If he had observed carefully at that time, he should have noticed that there was a little elf missing from the right side of her left leg. A girl really changed 18 times between childhood and womanhood. At first, she was just a stupid dog with an amazing appetite, but she couldn't even speak fluently. However, after a long hibernation, she suddenly learned to transform. Her cultivation base skyrocketed, and she resolutely turned into a beautiful girl. And she even had the heavenly voice. Now that he thought about it, at that time, the stupid dog rarely spoke, and even when she spoke, she would stumble. Wasn't this a manifestation of the divine thing's concealment? Of course, in addition to that, Bai was still the same Bai. Her mind was simple, and her mind was simple. Then, she harbored evil intentions toward Xiao Bai, and then, her appetite was huge. However, for Wang Lu, it didn't matter whether Bai was male or female, stupid or smart. Even the bloodline of the demonic wolf was not important. No matter how good her talent was, it would take decades or even hundreds of years to really show its effect. Wang Lu couldn't wait that long for her. But now, there were too many places that could be used for her beautiful voice. Looking at the model dog in the corner, Wang Lu slightly narrowed his eyes and began to make a deeper calculation. Phew, the lingering sound lingers for 3 days. The words of the ancients can be felt by me. On the rostrum, a young Dixian who looked to be in his early 20s shook his head and then sighed. I feel that my entire jade mansion has been sublimated. Hearing this, Xian Mo laughed. You're exaggerating. Although that child's voice is beautiful, it's not like you haven't heard Luo Xue sing. How can Luo Xue be the same? There are 2 kinds of songs in this world, Luo Xue's, and not Luo Xue's. Comparing Luo Xue with other people is too much of a bully. Therefore, when I praise other people's singing, I never consider Luo Xue. Xian Mo said, oh, comparing Luo Xue with other people is indeed too much of a bully. But if I'm not mistaken, that child just now is the main force of the Wanxian League singing group. The young Dixian shook his head. That's just asking to be humiliated. I just hope that child won't be hit too hard after the competition and leave behind a shadow. I really like her singing. Ah, the next program is about to start. It seems to be a dance. It looks unique. It's probably the innovation of these later generations in the past 10,000 years. I hope it can be at the same level as just now. Let's wait and see. After Little Demon Wolf's song, it was Taoist Master Miao Yan's turn to appear on the stage. It was a singing and dancing team composed of 12 stunning women. The content of this team's performance was exactly the same as the dance performed by the cheerleading girls when Taoist Master Wu Su fought against Three Rivers Scholar. However, many details had been optimized. At the same time, the composition of the girl group had also changed, and the overall quality was far superior. It was just that, compared to Quan Zhouhua's singing, the evaluation of the second program was much flatter. The response from the Dixian people was not particularly strong. The strong response came from the audience of 9 regions, especially those with slightly weaker cultivation base. Halfway through, they were dazzled by the girls' snow-white thighs, and their nosebleeds gushed out like a fountain. However, the effect of this provocative dance on the Dixian people was much worse. Except for a few people who danced with joy, the others looked very calm. Alas, they even brought this kind of program. Aren't they running out of tricks too fast? Do they expect us, the Earth-true immortals, to lose our guard because of this level of provocation? What a joke. Hey, Jelon, wipe your nosebleed, it's too shameful. Why do you care? The immortal path that I uphold is the path of sensual pleasures, so having a nosebleed is a matter of course. Moreover, my blood is very vigorous, so a little blood is nothing. As the leader, Xian Mo ignored the quarrel behind her. She slightly frowned and said to herself, is there any profound meaning in this program? Wang Lu should not make useless arrangements. I always feel that this opening ceremony is not so simple, and there's a big conspiracy hidden in it. In Xian Mo's suspicion, one program after another appeared on the stage. Some were ingenious and eye-catching, while some were mediocre and not surprising. But in short, there was no more shock brought by the heavenly sound. And the patience of the audience finally began to wear away in the sound of singing and dancing. The program was indeed wonderful, but compared with the grand competition, these appetizers would inevitably become boring after eating too many of them. It seems that this opening ceremony is almost like this. My previous hunch is mostly wrong. Xian Mo said to his partner behind him, let Black get ready. However, at this time, the mediocre dance on the stage ended. The performers stepped down and Wang Lu, as the host, came to the stage. Next, please enjoy the calligraphy performance, starting from 0. Wang Lu's appearance on the stage attracted a lot of people's attention. There were so many programs before, but they didn't see him on the stage. Was there a mystery in this calligraphy performance? However, what was there to see in a calligraphy performance? However, the next moment, many people's eyes widened and their mouths opened wide. Because after the announcement, Wang Lu personally rolled up his sleeves, dipped the writing brush into the ink, and then spread the Xian paper on a flat table. Then, he began to write eloquently. It turns out that you wrote it yourself. Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform and search for His Majesty the King. In theory, there should be 2 updates today. Please wait and see. Chapter 629. Wang Lu had always believed that a leader who had to do everything himself was pathetic, because it meant that he had no one to use. And what was the difference between a leader who had no one to use and a waste? At least, in terms of leadership, they were useless. And now, Wang Lu was personally experiencing the tragedy of having to do everything himself. From the time he picked up the brush until now, he had already written tens of thousands of words in front of the table. Although his king pill-level body would not feel any pain in his wrist or discomfort in his lumbar spine, when he was writing, Wang Lu could feel a strong pressure, which made it difficult for him to breathe and made him sweat profusely. This martial arts arena could be one way isolated from the inside and outside. The audience outside could see inside, but the people inside could not see outside. Of course, this needed to be adjusted later. Therefore, in theory, Wang Lu should not feel any pressure. But now, he could clearly feel that many people were glaring at him with murderous gazes. Of course, this was not surprising. A good calligraphy performance had been turned into a copy of a super-long novel of nearly 20 million words. Anyone with a normal IQ would be able to see through his tricks, and it was natural for him to be angry. Similarly, because of the particularity of this task, it was difficult for Wang Lu to find a reliable calligraphy master to carry it out, so he had to do it himself. Among the cultivators, those who cultivated the way of calligraphy were quite devout. When they heard that they had to copy a book under the watchful eyes of the public, moreover, it was a super-long novel, many of them turned hostile on the spot. Some of them had a calm mind and frankly admitted that they had never learned to write 20 million words in one go. As for the mortals, there were some calligraphers who were easy to buy. A bottle of immortal ink and a few immortal pills were enough to make them let go of their scholarly reservations. The problem was, even if these mortals had strong writing skills, it was impossible for them to write 20 million words in one go. Even if their wrist was broken, they would not be able to do it. Not to mention that even if they wrote wildly, they could only write thousands of words in 2 hours, which would take thousands of hours without sleep or rest for hundreds of days. Therefore, in the end, Wang Lu could only do it himself. As the top student of Spirit Sword Sect, his calligraphy was passable. At the peak of the King Pill level, his physical body was strong and his endurance was extraordinary. Let alone not sleeping for hundreds of days, even for several years, it would not be a big deal. What was even rarer was that he didn't have any restraint or moral integrity. He was copying popular novels with a straight face. He didn't feel any psychological pressure at all. The only source of pressure was the furious Dixian outside the arena. Does that kid think we're idiots? Under the watchful eyes of the public, is this the sincerity of the Wuxia League cultivators? The anger of the Dixian could not penetrate the isolation of the arena to directly overwhelm Wang Lu, so they had to shift their target to Supreme Hichu, who was close to them. Facing the Dixian's rage, Hichu Daoran only chuckled without saying a word. Firstly, he wasn't good at arguing, and he didn't have the ability to convince these Dixian to calm down with his eloquent words. Secondly, Wang Lu had already reported this matter to him and made sufficient plans. There would naturally be someone to deal with this situation. That's not right. Sure enough, without the need for he too to worry, someone came out from behind and stood in front of the Dixian. That person was dressed in snow-white clothes. Her black hair was tied behind her head like a waterfall. There was a bamboo sword and a wine gourd on her waist. She looked like a wandering immortal. She was the #1 expert in 9 regions, King Pill. Wang Wu answered the question of the Dixian on behalf of he too and said, "The Wuxia League is indeed very sincere, please don't misunderstand." The most angry Dixian could not help but stand up and pointed at Wang Lu, who was still copying in the arena, and said, "Sincere? How can this damn calligraphy copy be called sincere? I've never heard of any famous calligraphy work called, starting from zero." Wang Wu lightly said, "Of course, this is a calligraphy work that was born during your deep sleep, so it's normal that you haven't heard of it." Then you have the ability to take out the original and let us have a look. Copying must have the original to be called copying, right? I've already remembered it in his heart. The way of calligraphy lies in one's heart. Moreover, before the age of chaos, all of you were the top powerhouses in the continent, so what new things haven't you seen in the world? If we copy the calligraphy work of your time, it's like showing off our slight skill in front of an expert, which is a sign of lack of sincerity. You're clearly pestering us endlessly. How could there be such a long calligraphy piece in the world? Moreover, I think this momentum is endless. You guys just want to take this opportunity to delay the time. Wang Wu continued to be stubborn. That's why art keeps pace with the times and constantly innovates. There's no such thing in your time, but it doesn't mean there won't be in the future. As for delaying the time, that's just your unilateral malicious speculation. In fact, in my eyes, what I see is one of the best genius cultivators in the Wuxia League showing you the art of calligraphy in an incomparably humble manner. From the beginning to the end, we have never crossed the line. Ridiculous, this is ridiculous. The furious Dixian couldn't help but want to take out his immortal treasure, but before he could do so, he was stopped by Xian Mo. "Don't be impulsive. If we start the war now, we'll be in the wrong." "Xian Mo, you still want to speak for them at this time?" Dixian was furious. "You want to reason with them, but they are pestering you endlessly. What's there to say to such people?" Xian Mo said, "Pay attention to the last sentence she just said. From the beginning to the end, they have never crossed the line. She's right. Although this absurd calligraphy performance is just to delay the time, from the perspective of the rules, they can't be blamed. Hearing this, Dixian froze. What rules? It's the proposal that they submitted at the beginning, the one that we all reviewed and approved. I just carefully looked through it, and there's no time limit for the opening ceremony. You mean, it's reasonable for them to delay the time here? Xian Mo shook his head. Of course not. They are taking advantage of the loophole in the rules, but after all, we have also agreed to this loophole. What a joke. So what if we agreed? At that time, who would have thought that they would use the rules to do such a despicable thing? I don't agree with this kind of loophole rule at all. Before he finished speaking, he heard Wang Wu sneer. Well said. You deny it when it's not good for you. We can clearly see the sincerity of your Dixian. It's obvious that you are despicable first. Seeing that a new round of quarrel was about to break out, Xian Mo frowned, but she was somewhat helpless. Her prestige as the team leader was actually very limited. It was just that among the group of Dixian, they couldn't choose a more convincing leader for the time being, so they pushed her to be the team leader. Once a situation like this happened, she really couldn't control the situation. Bai Zai's prestige was higher than hers, although he was very unpopular, and his character was even more disgusting. He was deeply appreciated by the boss and did a lot of things for him. But at this time, it was already good enough that he didn't take pleasure in their misfortune. She really couldn't count on him. The only person she could count on was him, who always regarded himself as a sinner and didn't want to show his face in public. At this moment, Xian Mo suddenly felt that there was one more person behind him, and a low voice sounded in his ears. It was the warm voice that made Xian Mo instantly feel relieved. Enough, stop arguing. The rostrum instantly quieted down. The Earth Immortal, whose face was flushed with anger just now, took 2 steps back, and the resentment in his heart vanished like smoke in thin air. Those Earth Immortals who were watching enthusiastically also retreated. The black-clothed Dixian walked over from the void and said softly, "Let's just go on like this. After all, the rules have been recognized by both sides." Even if there is a trap hidden in it, if we can't recognize it at the time, we can only blame it on our carelessness at that time. Hearing the black-clothed man's words, Xian Mo was very relieved. His prestige was second only to that of the former leader who led the group of Dixian to build the group of immortal tombs. His words really carried enormous weight. Since you said so, I agree. The Dixian, who was still angry just now, also shook his head with a wry smile. It's just that, I never knew that you, Black, are such a pedantic and persistent person. Pedantic? The black-clothed Dixian paused for a moment. You're wrong, this is not pedantic. What the young man said just now is right. We are too different from this union of 10,000 immortals. We even lack the basic understanding of each other. In this case, it is necessary to work together, whether we agree or not, we must stick to the rules. Even if, that's just a trick they use to delay time? The black-clothed man asked, isn't it also a test of our sincerity? If they can't tolerate such a problem, and even want to tear off all pretense of cordiality, do you think they will feel at ease to cooperate with us? This. I understand. Being questioned, Dixian was full of shame. I think the problem is too simple. The black-clothed man nodded. So, this time, we will swallow this loss first. But on the other hand, he said, and then turned to look at Wang Wu. Our patience is not endless. We can tolerate you to take some advantages within the scope of the rules, but don't forget the basic purpose of our cooperation, which is to avoid internal friction and waste. If too much time is wasted on this boring trap, then there is no need to continue the cooperation. Oh. Wang Wu shrugged and nodded with a chuckle. Thus, the storm was resolved. The several Earth immortals looked at each other in dismay, and then sat back in their seats. Some closed their eyes to rest, while others looked at Wang Lu's transcription with interest. No one mentioned the dispute just now. The prestige of the man in black was so high that even the union of 10,000 immortals was dumbfounded. At the same time, they were glad that this person regarded himself as a sinner and refused to come to the front of the stage, causing Dixian to be leaderless. Otherwise, Wang Lu's plan would not have succeeded from the beginning. After the black-clothed man dealt with the dispute, he stepped into the void again, like a dragon whose tail was nowhere to be seen. After the black-clothed man left, Wang Wu withdrew and found a remote empty seat to sit down. After sitting down, the woman looked at her slightly trembling right hand. After a long silence, she let out an undetectable chuckle. As expected of the top figure in Dixian. I haven't experienced the feeling of being suppressed by someone's aura for a long time. Consider it as a celebration for this book being banned on Qidian. I won't post a comment. Just post an advertisement on the WeChat public platform. Everyone is welcome to follow the WeChat public platform. Just search for His Majesty the King. Chapter 630. 3 days later. In front of the desk, Wang Lu was still writing. Although he had not closed his eyes for 3 days and 3 nights, he looked energetic, without the slightest sign of fatigue. His right wrist even became more firm and powerful. Wang Lu's calligraphy copying performance had lasted for 3 days. From scratch, he had copied hundreds of thousands of characters at an amazing speed. The manuscript paper was stacked like a mountain, and it was still increasing at an amazing speed. The momentum seemed endless. In these 3 days, most of the audience had given up watching. With Wang Lu's attitude of stalling for time, people soon realized that there would probably be no more serious program later on, so there was no need to waste time here. At the same time, the Wanxian League operated efficiently and quickly organized the contestants to return to the training ground for the assault training. The news from Wang Wu was that Wang Lu planned to delay the opening ceremony for at least a year or two, so that the contestants could make their last stand. Although it was hard to imagine how he could accomplish this feat, at present, they could only work according to this plan. Previously, after 2 months of assault training, many people had broken through the bottleneck and their strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. If they could consolidate the results for another 1 or 2 years, then after the start of the competition, they might be able to complete the miracle of defeating Dixian. Of course, this was also a must-win situation. Wang Lu had tried his best to create too many favorable conditions for the union of 10,000 immortals, organizing the grand competition to decide the winner and loser. The competition was also divided into 2 kinds, civil and military. Then, he had won a lot of training time for the participants. If the union of 10,000 immortals could not win this competition, it would be too sorry for Wang Lu's hard work. On the other hand, those who entered the City of Immortals with expectations also took this opportunity to get to know the city better. The battlefield of the City of Immortals was hundreds of miles in radius, and there were many folded spaces inside, so the real space was difficult to estimate. Such a huge city was divided into 5 areas and hundreds of communities. At present, Area A was open to everyone, which was the general residential area. This area could accommodate up to 10 million people and provide them with basic living necessities. Most people in the mortal world would settle down here and then try to find their own immortal fate. There were countless cultivators gathered in the City of Immortals, so the so-called immortal fate was naturally not small. Every day, many mortals were chosen by cultivators and crossed the barrier between immortal and mortal. There were also many disciples of small sects or rogue cultivators who encountered the favor of the elders of high-rank sects and had a meteoric rise. In short, everyone had their own brilliance. Only the people who had been sitting on the rostrum for the past 3 days were torturous. According to the rules, the members on the rostrum were not allowed to leave their seats during the opening ceremony. Once they went on stage, they had to wait for the show to end. The design of this rule was originally to restrict the higher-ups of both sides from appearing at the same time, so that the other side would not be on tenterhooks. When the Dixians saw this, they all agreed, but who would have thought that it would become a forbidden spell that restricted their movements? As long as they still recognized the validity of the rules of the grand competition, no matter how dissatisfied they were, they could only stay on the field to enjoy the show. Thus, when the organizing committee of the Wuxia League Grand Competition fully operated the training, more than 80% of the Dixian in the Tombs of Immortals could only sit on the rostrum outside the arena and watch Wang Lu copy the novel for 3 days. This kind of psychological torture was self-evident. Therefore, after 3 days, there was a Dixian who could not hold back, stood up and roared angrily. "What the hell, how long does he want to write? It's been 3 days already." Originally, the whole opening ceremony was expected to be less than a day, right? Even if he wants to delay the time, he has delayed it long enough. In this regard, the cultivators of the Wuxia League just looked at him and turned a deaf ear. Xian sighed and reached out to pull him so that he would stop talking. 3 days? Perhaps the other side wanted to delay it for 3 months or even 3 years. At the last pre-competition meeting, the strength that Wang Lu showed was simply astonishing. The cultivators of the Wuxia League had really made great progress during this period. However, if they wanted to overwhelm the Dixian in the arena, they had to do at least a few more years of targeted training. After all, Wang Lu's strength was only a special case. Xian Mo had previously made an assessment with his companions who were good at deduction. The conclusion was that unless the Wuxia League was given more than a year, the overall advantage of the Dixian should be unshakable. However, now it seemed that the Wuxia League was also aware of this, so they had this shameless delaying tactic. As for the delay, of course, the longer the better. Let's wait for 2 more days. If it's still like this, I will take measures. Since Xian Mo had said so, even if other people still had objections, they had to keep it for the time being. However, people were also suspicious. With Xian Mo's easygoing personality, if the situation did not change after 2 days, what could she do? Thus, 2 days passed in a flash. Unsurprisingly, the situation did not change at all. Wang Lu was still writing in front of the table. One after another, freshly written manuscripts were carried by the sword wind he flicked out, slowly and smoothly flying off the table. The thin paper covered the soft lawn, gently swaying with the breeze, but it did not fly up with the wind. Instead, it was firmly stuck to the ground by an invisible force. In 2 days, Wang Lu had copied thousands of pages. In addition to the thousands of pages of manuscripts that he had copied in the past few days, they were all scattered on the ground after he broke them up, forming a vast expanse of black and white words. Those who didn't know this might think that he was showing off his calligraphy, but the cultivators on the rostrum could see that Wang Lu was taking the opportunity to practice his primal chaos heaven-splitting sword. The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, which was hard and fierce, was now being controlled by him like a gentle wind. It gently lifted the thin paper from the table to the lawn, and then gently pressed them down. His strength was neither too light nor too heavy, just right. If it was a bit weaker, the paper would be blown away by the wind. If it was too heavy, it would crush the tender grass under the paper, staining the manuscript with grass juice. At the same time, he had to forcibly soften this fierce sword Qi so that it would not cut the paper. At the same time, Wang Lu's vigorous writing on the table was also a kind of cultivation. This program was nominally a calligraphy performance, and Wang Lu had indeed come up with a good calligraphy that did not disgrace the reputation of Spirit Sword Sect's top student. Although his writing was fast, every word was written with full concentration, integrating his own understanding of the way of the sword into it. Purely in terms of calligraphy, Wang Lu had not yet reached the next level. In the eyes of the great calligraphers in the mortal world, he was still very immature. However, coupled with his unique and awe-inspiring sword qi, he impressively stood in a realm that was difficult for any mortal world's great master to reach. This calligraphy performance was indeed well-deserved. In the next 5 days, Wang Lu's handwriting became more and more aggressive. The silver hook and iron painting showed their sharpness, like a thin sword densely covered on the paper. Using calligraphy to nourish the sword intent, and then using thin paper to sharpen the sword qi, Wang Lu seemed to be doing a boring plagiarist, but his sword cultivation was growing day by day. However, this scene had another meaning in the eyes of the supremes of the Wuxia League. Behind he too, a red-robed old man sighed and said, "I remember more than 500 years ago, when I first embarked on the road of immortal cultivation, my humble sect's patriarch once said that there are geniuses in the world that we can't reach. At that time, I was proud and arrogant, relying on my heavenly spirit root qualification to be insufferably arrogant. I asked him, is there a spirit root of a higher grade than the heavenly spirit root in the world? Is there a peerless comprehension that I can't even catch up to? My patriarch said that my spirit root and comprehension are the best in the world. Even if there is someone stronger than me, there is a limit to their strength. I then asked him, if that's the case, is there anyone I can't reach? At this point, the surrounding supremes became interested and listened attentively. The red-robed old man continued, at that time, my patriarch told me that the scary thing isn't that someone is smarter than you, but that someone smarter than you works harder than you. I'm not convinced. With my passion for immortal cultivation, how can there be someone more hardworking than me? The supremes secretly nodded. This red-robed old man had cultivated for more than 500 years and was a peerless master who was half a step above the peak of the body integration realm. His talent and comprehension were extraordinary, and he cultivated very hard. He never married or had children in his life, and he didn't have any special hobbies. He devoted himself to cultivation wholeheartedly. It was really unbelievable that someone could be more hardworking than him. My patriarch said that it's impossible for cultivators to have a smooth journey. There will always be some kind of obstacle that will force you to stop cultivating. Cultivators can abstain from eating and sleep, but it's impossible for a person to go into seclusion from birth. They have to gain experience and travel. During this period, their cultivation can only be intermittent. However, he said that there are true geniuses in the world who can turn any situation into training for themselves. They can use any place as their training ground and training room. Now, I think that Wang Lu has the temperament that my patriarch spoke of. Fellow Taoist Feng Yin, your sect has really received a treasure. Feng Yin smiled. Patriarch is really overpraising me. This child, Wang Lu, is far from incessant cultivation. In the past 20 years, he has wasted a lot of time. Although he has earned a lot of fame through a few experiences, it has more or less delayed his cultivation. The red-robed patriarch shook his head and said, the past is the past, and the future is the future. He is now standing on that path, and I have been diligently pursuing that path for 500 years, but I still can't get it. If I can go back to 20 years ago, I will take this child into my sect no matter what. Patriarch, if you want to say that, you have to be behind me. A few years ago, I told fellow Taoist Feng Yin that if time can really go back in this world, the first thing I will do is to go back to the time before their Lingjian school's grand immortal gathering. Then, even if I have to cheat and kidnap, I will pull Wang Lu into our sect. On the side of the Wuxia League, several supremes were talking and laughing, surrounding Wang Lu and talking about all kinds of things. On the other side of the rostrum, the Dixian people were getting more and more restless. 2 days had passed, but no matter how they looked at it, Xian Mo did not come up with any effective way to stop the opponent from unscrupulously stalling for time. Xian Mo, did you forget what you said 2 days ago? Xian Mo sighed softly, of course I won't forget. Indeed, it's time to take measures. I am attending a wedding, so I can't add updates on the weekend. Please forgive me. Then, I will continue to Amway the WeChat public platform. Welcome to follow me, search for His Majesty the King. Thank you for your support. Chapter 631. 2 days ago, I asked everyone to restrain themselves, so now it's my turn to clean up this situation. After that, Xian Mo stood up and stretched his arms, as if he wanted to hold something in his arms. At the same time, the Wanxian League Supremes on the other side of the rostrum also stopped talking and looked at Xian Mo at the same time, each of them on guard. Obviously, the Dixian Supremes were impatient and were about to take action. No matter what their action was, it would not be beneficial to the Wanxian League. Therefore, when it was necessary to stop it, they would not hesitate to confront the Dixian Supremes head-on. However, when the situation was tense, Wang Wu stood up and said, "Hey, you're not going to be crazy enough to directly interfere with the performance, are you?" Xian Mo chuckled and said, "If you don't intend to abide by the rules, we don't need to wait for so long. Don't worry, we won't violate any rules." As she spoke, the power gathered in front of her chest became more and more powerful. It was above any cultivator in the Wanxian League, beyond the peak of the Unity stage, and could even be regarded as the top power in the Mahayana stage. The perfected lords present had no doubt that if this power were to be unleashed, no one would be able to withstand it alone. Therefore, he too, Feng Yin, and the other sect leaders of the major sects connected their magic power at the same time, ready to join forces to fight against the enemy. At the same time, the Dixian Supremes felt the tit-for-tat momentum and also responded one after another, either by taking out their immortal treasures or simply chanting incantations. Golden patterns appeared on their skin, and their fighting spirit burned like flames. A war had already stepped on the edge. As the initiator, Xian Mo smiled helplessly and said, "Don't be so hostile, everyone. Please take back your immortal treasures and immortal techniques. We really don't need to waste precious power on each other." Wang Wu said, "That's right. Then please explain, what are the essence chi balls you gathered in front of your chest for? Is it to liven up the atmosphere?" Xian Mo said, "There's no harm in saying that I'm here to stop this farce." "Oh. The rules clearly state that external forces are not allowed to interfere with the competition." Xian Mo smiled and said, "That is indeed the case, but on the other hand, the rules have never said that we are not allowed to interfere with the arena itself." As he spoke, the power in front of Xian Mo's chest finally finished accumulating, and a tremendous force that could shake an entire province exploded with a loud bang. At the same time, several Supremes subconsciously tried to use spells to stop it. However, the difference in level and quality caused these spells to be bounced off by an irresistible force. People could only watch helplessly as this huge force erupted and enveloped the entire arena in the blink of an eye. However, his power did not seep in. As promised, Xian Mo would not interfere with the battle with external forces. What did she do? The same question actually remained in the hearts of the Earth Immortals. Although they had been good friends who had fought side by side 16,000 years ago, as the top cultivators of the continent, each of them had more or less secrets. And they would tacitly not touch these sensitive areas. What Xian Mo did just now was obviously showing one of her trump cards, but what was the meaning of this trump card? In the silence, the red-robed patriarch suddenly said, "Wait, is it my illusion? Why do I feel that?" Wang Lu's writing speed seems to have become faster. Upon hearing this, the several supremes next to him fixed their eyes on Wang Lu. They saw Wang Lu bending over the table on the lawn, writing at a rapid speed. His wrist shook like a phantom, and one by one, the manuscript paper flew down from the table. It is indeed a little faster, but it's nothing strange. Maybe Wang Lu's sword intent has made a breakthrough again, so she can't help but write like a dragon and forget to control the time? After watching for a while, the red-robed patriarch said in horror, Wang Lu is not the only one who is fast. Look at the fallen leaves in the surrounding forest. Yes, the falling leaves are also falling faster. Wait a minute, could it be? At this moment, even Hichu Daoran was shocked. Time distortion? Rumor has it that when immortal technique was cultivated to the extreme, it could distort time. The immortal tea that immortal Qin used to suppress the 6 supremes was one of the outstanding examples. However, in the recorded history of 9 regions, there were only a few examples of miracles like the immortal tea. Moreover, all of them were born in the heyday of the immortal path, when it was extremely prosperous. After the age of chaos, the immortal path declined, and it was only in the past 1,000 years that the decline was reversed. With the cultivation base of modern people, it was almost impossible to reproduce the power of immortals. Even Hichu Daoran, who had the highest cultivation base, could only affect the passage of time to a small extent. Moreover, there was no hope of reversing the flow of time, only speeding it up or slowing it down. However, at this moment, right in front of them, a large-scale time distortion phenomenon was actually happening. Xian Mo accelerated the time in the entire arena, and it was getting faster and faster. In the eyes of He Tu and the others, Wang Lu was not only moving his pen as if it was flying, but his whole person had turned into a group of blurred phantoms. They saw that on the table, the draft paper flowed down like a waterfall, covering the lawn. And the red sun that was previously on the horizon was constantly climbing up at a speed that was discernible to the naked eye. At least 10 times faster. Soon, the red-robed patriarch calculated the acceleration multiplier of Xian Mo. The multiplier was not particularly exaggerated, but this was a time distortion phenomenon that spread throughout the entire arena and lasted for an unknown time. To exaggerate a bit, under the theory of immortal cultivation in 9 regions, this phenomenon was simply impossible to exist. Is this really not against the rules? The red-robed patriarch asked. She interfered with the entire arena, and her power did not penetrate the inside of the arena. Therefore, Wang Lu didn't even notice the abnormality. At most, it can only be regarded as an edge ball. Wang Wu said, but speaking of edge ball, isn't Wang Lu's action the same? Therefore, we don't have enough position to accuse each other of anything. It's just that everyone has their own means. Time acceleration, she's awesome. But, it's just 10 times faster. Wang Wu inwardly sneered, so what if it's 10 times faster? Yes, the super-long novel that was regarded as a classic by Wang Lu was not infinite in length. So far, the length was about 20 million words, which was appalling. Wang Lu's copying speed was 100,000 words a day, which was far above that of an ordinary person. And after 10 times faster, it was 1 million words a day. A series of 20 million words could be copied in only 20 days. This might seem a bit long for Dixian, but in the Wanxian League, it was too short. 20 days was far from enough for those contestants to make a qualitative breakthrough. Wang Lu's own expected time was more than 1 year. How to make up for the huge gap between 20 days and 1 year? Very simple, it depended on creative ability. Because the novel was not finished, so far, the plot was completely open, and no one knew what would happen next. Therefore, when Wang Lu finished copying the existing part, he would start writing on his own. As for Wang Lu's creative ability, Wang Wu did not doubt it at all. A few years ago, when the master and disciple lived together happily on Non-Phase Peak, it was common for the master and disciple to cheat each other. And Wang Lu often wrote his master's dojin novels as a means of revenge. And the plot design in those dojin novels was full of fantastic ideas, which made Wang Wu, the person involved, amazed. She couldn't stop reading it, and even lost her appetite. She had to see clearly what kind of she had encountered in the novel before she could feel at ease. And this was the most hateful thing about Wang Lu. Not only did he write dojinshi, but every time, he would never finish it. He would always come to the point where his passion surged and his sword would come to an abrupt stop. And when Wang Wu questioned him with the previous drafts, Wang Lu sneered, "Bitch, you want to have a climax? No way." Never finishing a novel was undoubtedly a bad habit in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the current situation, it was simply a rare divine skill. It was best if Wang Lu could maintain his creative energy for 100 years. He would write until the seas dried up and the rocks crumbled, or until that pretentious black-clothed Dixian couldn't hold it anymore and came out to stop. On the other side, after the time distortion, Xian Mo sat down wearily. Her body couldn't help but tremble, and beads of sweat began to flow from her forehead. Time distortion, for a first-class Dixian like her, was also an extremely heavy burden. Just now, she tried her best, and even her immortal spirit was almost unstable, but finally, she completed the immortal technique. Among the effects of this immortal technique, 90% of it was a trick. Distorting time had always been a supreme masterpiece of the immortal Tao. Although Xian Mo had studied this art quite a bit, she could not be considered a top-notch great master. In the past, immortal Qin could only use a pot of immortal tea, so how could she surpass immortal Qin? The key to this immortal technique was to borrow strength to fight strength, and it was very fragile in nature. There were 3 weaknesses. First, there couldn't be an existence that was too strong in the field. The stronger the existence, the stronger the influence on time and space, and the more difficult it was to interfere. If there was a supreme-level cultivator in the field, it would be difficult for her to speed up by 20 to 30%. Second, the changes in the field couldn't be too intense. For example, moving mountains and filling seas, lightning and thunder would greatly affect the time distortion. However, Wang Lu chose the quietest and most peaceful performance. His violent sword energy was restrained in thousands of thin sheets of paper, and the impact on time distortion was minimized. Third, there was only one living being in the field, and the time distortion immortal technique was most afraid of too many people. With every additional person, the effect of the immortal technique would be halved, and it would be almost ineffective if there were more than 3 to 5 people. Fortunately, the Wanxian League didn't know much about immortal techniques, so they didn't see the flaws. Right now, the field was accelerated by 10 times, but as time passed, the effect of time distortion would continue to increase, until it was 20 times, 30 times, or even 100 times. According to Wang Lu's daily copying of 100,000 words, no matter how monumental it would only take a few days to finish it. With this thought, Xian Mo restrained her immortal spirit, and her eyelids were already very heavy. Before going to sleep, she didn't forget to remind the people around her. "Help me keep an eye on him, don't let him play tricks after he finishes." Chapter 632. You guys, what are you talking about? Xian Mo couldn't sort out her thoughts even after 2 breaths of time. Even with her surging immortal spirit, she couldn't wash away the doubts in her mind. 20 days had passed, and the scene in front of her didn't seem to have changed much. In the novel, Wang Lu's figure turned into a phantom and kept writing. Hundreds of thousands of papers had been written, and they neatly covered the lawn like a snowfield in winter. On the rostrum, the immortals of the Wuxia League were still watching silently. On the other side, the Dixian immortals were watching the novel with rapt attention and discussing it with each other. Hearing Xian Mo's words, the Dixian immortals replied without turning their heads, "Of course, we're discussing the plot." Oh, the battle of the three holy spirits has finally begun. The main character's side is indeed powerful, crushing all the enemies. Ah, the great Holy Spirit has used his hidden ultimate skill. As expected, the strength of the antagonist is not to be underestimated. He won't just wait for death. Xian Mo asked. Are you guys reading the novel from zero? What else can it be? I've never seen such an exciting novel in my life. Hey, Xian Mo, you're awake. Xian Mo was so angry that she laughed. Huh, you just realized it? I asked you to help me keep an eye on Wang Lu and not let him play tricks. What are you doing now? After being yelled at by Xian Mo, the Dixian immortals finally came back to their senses and pretended to be enlightened. Then, one of them explained the whole story to Xian Mo with a bitter smile. That day, when Xian Mo fell asleep, the rest of the Dixian immortals began to keep an eye on Wang Lu to prevent him from playing tricks again. According to their expectation, Wang Lu would run out of writing in 1 or 2 days under the condition of 10 times or dozens of times the speed of writing. However, after 3 days, the story was still going on. When Wang Lu wrote, he looked intoxicated and couldn't stop. This guy can't be writing nonsense to fool us, right? Come to think of it, no matter what kind of long serial it was, there should be nothing left to write after 40 to 50 million words. What the hell was he writing now? Therefore, the Dixian began to seriously read his newly written words, trying to find the gaps and inconsistencies. As a result, when we come back to our senses, it will be the same as before. Xian Mo was completely convinced. You guys are all great Dixian immortals, and your immortal hearts are strong and pure, almost no less than that of the true immortals of the upper realm. Yet, you guys were captivated by a novel he casually wrote? The Dixian quickly explained, of course not, but when we watched it from the beginning to the end for the first time, we found that his plot was really coherent, and there were no gaps. There was no way to stop him midway. While Xian Mo was still tangled, several Dixian had been immersed in the magnificent world of starting from zero again. Hey, the three holy spirits have been defeated while we were talking. So, the protagonist can finally get the Mirror of Nirvana to restart the world line and let the Daughter of the Earth be reborn, right? Ah, the plot that I've been looking forward to for 100 million words is finally going to start. Xian Mo's hair stood on end. Restarting the world line? Moreover, it's the protagonist who deliberately restarted it? What kind of plot has developed? Moreover, it took 100 million words just to restart the world line? This. Could 1 year really stop Wang Lu? Speaking of which, while sharpening his sword qi, he could also create 10 million words a day. According to Wang Lu's timeline, he had been standing still in the field and writing for several years. This tenacity was simply incredible. At the same time, several other Dixian felt deeply worried about this. Not everyone could be as heartless as the several Dixian in the front row, immersed in the plot of the novel. The more wonderful and long Wang Lu's novel was, the more worried they were. The grand competition had not yet officially begun, but the opening ceremony was already full of twists and turns, which made the situation completely out of control. What should they do next? On the rostrum, there was another unbearable silence. Time went by bit by bit. 1 day, 2 days. The black never appeared. Some Dixian such as Bai Zhe who looked on coldly from the sidelines also showed no expression, as if they were watching a good show. Just when Xian Mo was beginning to despair about the current situation, things took a turn for the better. Because Wang Lu suddenly stopped in the field. His stop was so abrupt that many people present were caught off guard. What's wrong? Why did he stop? Yeah, he's about to do the double cultivation with the 47 revolutions of the mysterious daughter of the 9 heavens. Why did he stop? Xian Mo also widened his eyes, puzzled by the situation in the field. Because Wang Lu seemed to be in the right state. His sword intent had been nourished to be sharp and fierce, his sword chi was both hard and soft, and his immortal heart had also become meticulous under the training of the long-term distraction serial. It was the moment when he cultivated to his heart's content, and he had just finished rebooting the world line for the 47th time from zero. He was about to get married with his former nemesis, his current lover, the Empyrean fairy of the 9 heavens. The plot was reaching its climax, so why would he stop? From any point of view, there was no reason for him to stop, but he did. But, why? At this time, the number 1 king pill in 9 regions from the Wanxian League suddenly jumped up and said, "What the hell? Wang Lu, you be *tch, you're really addicted to being a eunuch." I'll give you one for your collection, and I'll have to trouble you to sign the other one, okay? Wang Lu nodded in silence and then signed his name on one of the jade slips, Zhang'er Iron Whip. Although I'm exhausted, there's still a second update. Please vote for me. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.